27th, 2020, Monday. And I would like to start with roll call.
Councilmember O'Neill.
Here.
Councilmember Beer. Councilmember Fatterlaus.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Beckmeyer.
Here.
Mayor Martin.
Here. And we will salute to the flag led by Mayor Pro Tem Beckmeyer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there a closed session report from Acting City Attorney Lorenzo Hines?
No. Oh, no, from no,
Attorney, pardon me.
no reportable action.
Great. So while I'm at it, we've got Acting City Attorney, City Manager Lorenzo Hines this evening. Our City Manager, Kevin Woodhouse, is laid up with a bum Achilles. So keep him in your thoughts and positive energies. So, Assistant City Manager Lorenzo Hines, would you please introduce our special presentation?
Good evening, everyone. Lorenzo Hines, Assistant City Manager. I'd like to introduce Adrienne Carr. She was appointed as General Manager of the North Coast County Water District in December 2019. Adrienne is responsible for implementing policies and priorities set by the district's Board of Directors and is committed to carrying out the district's mission of serving customers by delivering a sufficient quantity of high-quality water in the most cost-effective, reliable, and environmentally sensitive manner. Previously, she was a Senior Water Resources Specialist at the Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency, where she worked to develop new water supplies, protect water rights, and ensure high-quality water for Bosco's 26 member agencies, including the North Coast County Water District. Adrienne has a PhD in Geological and Environmental Sciences from Stanford and a BS in Hydrogenealogy from Western Michigan University. She resides in Brisbane with her husband and 2 kids. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Lorenzo. I'd really like to actually thank the City Manager, Kevin Woodhouse, and Assistant City Manager, Lorenzo Hines, because during my first week, I started in mid-December, they hosted me at the city hall for a meeting and welcomed me into the community and invited me here tonight. So really thank them for making me feel welcome in Pacifica. It is really my honor to continue the 75-year tradition that North Coast County Water District has established of providing high-quality water, high-quality, reliable drinking water to the city of Pacifica, in addition to providing excellent customer service. So my primary focus as the general manager is to implement the mission of the North Coast County Water District and also implement the policies and priorities of our 5-member board of directors. Some of the district's most pressing priorities, including implementing our 20-year water master plan, which is really our capital improvement program. It's really essential that we work to maintain the critical infrastructure that is used to provide the safe and reliable water supply to our customers. The district is also committed to continuing to make water conservation a way of life, and we implement programs designed to achieve further water savings in our community. And finally, even though I'm new to the district, I've really come to appreciate the importance of the positive working relationship that we have with the city. It's really those relationships at a staff level that have been created over the years that make a difference to the work of both of our agencies. And it's a priority of mine to make sure that we continue to maintain those relationships. So again, thank you for having me.
Thank you for choosing to work here.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you so much.
And I look forward to getting to know you. I'll be at the joint articulation meeting, so I'll have an opportunity to have a relationship with you there. So
I look forward to it. I've heard about the Joint Articulation Committee, so I look forward to participating.
great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Moving on to the consent calendar, we have quite a few cards here for item number 11, which is oversized vehicles, and also for item number 7. So, can I have a motion?
Moved, remove item number 7 and 11 from the consent calendar, and then move to approve the rest of the consent calendar as stated, unless there's other questions.
I'll second.
All those in favor, please vote. Great. So moving on, the first item is, that was asked to be pulled, item number 7, which is the Cabrillo School Pedestrian Overcrossing Improvement Project. Is there any discussion before I let a member of the audience speak? No? Okay. So we've got a card from Gloria Stofan.
Yeah, she put that and the other.
Good evening, City Council members and city staff. My name's Gloria Stofan, and I'm a longtime resident of Pacifica. Concerns in the community of motorhome residents and the homeless are issues that I've come to you...
Excuse me, Gloria. The item that you gave me a card for was item number 7
11.
Which is the
and number 11.
Cabrillo Crosswalk.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just 11 item set. Okay.
Okay, so...
Never mind.
So not, we'll call you in a minute.
Okay,
Okay,
thank
great.
you.
So
There's a card on.
there is a card on 7 then. So great. We don't have to do anything strange. Dan Sedgink. Thank you.
11.
Good evening, council members. Thanks for hearing me tonight. I'm awfully pleased to see this finally coming to fruition. We led an email campaign, letter writing campaign on this back in November 2017, and I know a lot of stuff is happening in that neighborhood that's made it hard to get it complete, but I'm delighted to see that the Cabrillo Crosswalk is going to get somewhat renovated, made more safe. I've personally seen almost conservatively more than 20 accidents with kids there, and just like to say that every school in Pacifica should be taken a look at and have their crosswalks renovated. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. Anyone have anything to say?
Any other
Okay.
comment?
Can we just move right on to item number 11?
Okay.
Yep. Okay. So item number 11, we have a few cards here. Did you just want me to open it for comment first? Is there anything anyone up here would like to say? The item number 11 is, I will let you all know. Adoption of an ordinance amending Articles 11 and 12 of Chapter 7, Traffic within Title 4 of the Pacifica Municipal Code relating to oversized vehicle parking, CEQA exempt. So I think there's a report from staff.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. My name is Ryan Marquez. I'm with the Engineering Division. Here with me this evening, I have Chief of Police Dan Steidel and Deputy Director of Public Works Sam Bautista. We prepared a brief staff presentation for this item. So just to give you a bit of background, on December 9th, 2019, staff provided presentation on traffic safety issues relating to oversized vehicles. On that same night, Council conducted the first reading of the Oversized Vehicle Ordinance, and staff received direction to review and confirm streets that were subject to the ordinance for the January 2020 Council meeting. So just to review some of the traffic safety concerns that we discussed in the December meeting, here's it put very plainly is oversized vehicles can present travel lane constrictions on narrow roads or on curves. Oversized vehicles can overhang onto bicycle facilities, and oversized vehicles can cause sight distance issues near uncontrolled intersections. So here's a bit of background on how we analyzed the roads within Pacifica for this ordinance. We actually reviewed each individual road segment for a total of 589 segments of road in Pacifica. Some of the characteristics that we looked at and checked included, we confirmed the road width with our database using Google Earth, and then we did some QA/QC in the field to confirm those. We reviewed the road parking situation for each of these roads to see if there was parking on both sides, one side, none, or if it was diagonal, and that's to see how it impacted the travel lane widths. We reviewed the road. We spot checked a few different places on the roads to see if the road had a varying width, to see if it would either put it on the list or off the list for no oversized vehicle parking. And then we also looked to see if the road was a one-way, two-way, and to check the number of lanes on that street. We ultimately found that roads not suitable for oversized vehicle parking includes roads where travel lanes are less than 12 feet on bus routes, and travel lanes are less than 10 feet on non-bus route roads, and where bicycle facilities may be impacted by oversized vehicles overhanging into those bicycle facilities. So we found that 547 of the 589 road segments, or about 83 miles of Pacifica's 90 miles of road, are not suitable for oversized vehicle parking based on these criteria, and those roads are listed in Attachment A. So here's a quick summary of the ordinance. The ordinance defines an oversized vehicle as a single vehicle or a combination of vehicles 22 feet or more in length, 7 feet or more in width, and 8 feet or more in height. The ordinance makes an amendment to the Municipal Code Section 4-7.1106 and 1204. The ordinance adds a new section, Section 4-7.1205, which prohibits parking of oversized vehicle on streets that meet identified traffic safety criteria as specified in the ordinance. Additionally, prior to the first reading, council changed the effective date of the ordinance and also the time allowed for loading and unloading of oversized vehicles in the exception provision of the Municipal Code Section 4-7.1205. So here is a list of roads where oversized vehicles would be allowed to park in Pacifica. Some of the larger roads on this list include the southern section of Francisco Boulevard, the eastern section of Lindemar Boulevard, most of Odstad, some of the one-way roads here in West Sharp Park, and Terra Nova Boulevard. It should be noted that on some of these roads there are projected future bicycle facilities that may impact the allowability of oversized vehicles, pending funding and council approval, of course. So there may be some times in the future where we need to amend this list, and some of those may be based on curves causing overhang into travel lanes, future bicycle facility installation, as I mentioned on the last slide, changes to bus routes or noted bus interactions in the field, or portions of road that fall into one of the traffic safety hazards identified but was not accounted for in this analysis. So here's an overview of our proposed timeline right now for signage. We believe it'll take us around 6 weeks to come up with a strategy and produce plans for installing these signs. And then we believe it'll take about 4 to 6 weeks to order and receive custom signs. And at the same time, we will put out the installation to bid, and we believe that'll take around 2 weeks. And then that leads us into about April, which we hope to be able to award and schedule the installation of the signs. However, we're unsure on the price of the bids, so we're unsure if we will need to come back to council for the approval of that contract. From there, we believe it'll take around 7 weeks for contractor to install any necessary poles, and then 5 weeks concurrently to install the signs as well once they come in. However, it should be noted that there are some possible complications that may extend this timeline, and those could include a bad bidding environment where we're receiving high bids or possibly no bids. Contractor scheduling, if they're very busy, they may not be able to come out right away and start on this project. There may be various sign production delays, and Additionally, we're unsure how much sidewalk may need to be replaced. Some of these poles will most likely need to be put in the sidewalk, and if we need to do that, that will increase the amount of time needed to complete this work, as well as increase the price of the work. So now I'll hand it over to Chief Steidel.
Good evening. So regarding enforcement of the ordinance is adopted. The enforcement would not begin until after the effective date of the ordinance and all the signs are erected to give notice of the parking prohibitions. In addition to that, as is customary for any new sections or any law that we have, we would be giving, once the signs are erected, we'd be giving a 30-day reprieve where we would be issuing nothing but warning citations to try and educate the public and give the public the opportunity to comply with the new ordinance prior to issuing real citations. After 30 days of the warnings, real parking citations would be issued, and like all parking citations, they would be subject to the normal appeal process if somebody needed to contest one. Violation, I've heard some questions over the months about this, about whether we'd be towing these vehicles in violation. Violation of this ordinance is not a towing offense, citation offense. And we would not be towing these vehicles for this violation absent a separate offense that was occurring where towing is authorized or required. But in this case, just a simple violation of this ordinance is not a towing offense. So moving forward to possible next steps, staff is aware that the UP Task Force is currently working with the Pacifica Resource Center, the city, and church representatives regarding parking program options. Also, if desired, staff can create a special permit program prior to the ordinance enforcement to allow parking for overnight, for one night beyond the ordinance, provided 8 hours for loading and unloading of motorhomes in front of people's residences. So at this time, the city manager recommends that city council move to waive the second reading and adopt the ordinance of the city council amending Articles 11 and 12 of Chapter 7, Traffic within Title 4 of the Pacifica Municipal Code relating to oversized vehicle parking and finding the ordinance exempt under the California Environmental Quality Act, and move to adopt the resolution next in order identifying a list of public streets where parking of oversized vehicles is prohibited. And with that, staff is happy to entertain questions from council.
Great. Does anyone up here have any questions? Looks like Mary?
I do. Ryan, will we be able to have a copy of those streets that are allowed? I don't have that in front of me. I don't have the PowerPoint, so.
Sure. We could provide that.
I would really appreciate that. And also, just to clarify for everyone out there, with the timeline for enforcement, if you could just be very clear about that. I know in the report it says it could take up to 3 months for the effective day of the ordinance, so that means that no citations can be issued until all the signs are up. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that'll be approximately June?
That's what we're looking at right now.
Okay.
So if the signs were up in June, it wouldn't be till 30 days
Okay.
after that we would issue real citations.
And just so the public understands, it's really important for me. That one point is very important for me because we really want to get something in place to help our community before that starts happening. So thank you.
Sue Vardalos?
How many signs do you think you're going to need? Obviously, our sign division can't do the signs.
So we initially estimated around 200 signs. We still need to look into the placement of those signs and what those signs are going to say and come up with a plan for that.
Thank you.
And Mike O'Neill?
You said in the staff or in the PowerPoint that this was not a towing offense. Now, at some point, let's say they get 5 or 6 violations. Is that a towing offense, or is it just no towing?
So under the California Vehicle Code, just it would be for 5, for any unpaid parking citations, 5 or more unpaid parking citations may result in a tow. Doesn't have to, but it may. So it could be for this violation or any parking violation for that matter. It would have to be before it would be a towable offense.
Okay, and this only covers on-street, like the poster child of RV behavior is the 2 RVs in Rockaway parking lot, you know, behind the Best Western. They would not be covered by this, correct?
So you're referring to,
There's the parking lot off San Marlo Way, behind the Best Western.
Right.
And there's there's a pump station there, I think. There's 2 RVs that are there continually, but that's a parking lot, so those 2 would still be able to stay there, correct?
I believe that's correct.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why it's important for us to get the
That
layout.
there is
And a
a
map
mark.
actually would be very helpful for me, just
It's
visually.
marked no overnight parking, but the 2 guys work the night shift, so they're out every night, so. Okay, so I guess it will not affect those 2 RVs. Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Sue Beckmeyer?
And forgive me if I overlooked it here, with regard to curb painting, we had talked about there's some sightline issues and safety issues with large vehicles when you're coming out of a driveway and you're trying to see if traffic's coming. Is that part of the scope of work with regard to the signs and the other work that you were outlining, or is that something that the city's presently evaluating and undertaking?
So the sightline with regards to driveways was not covered in this ordinance. However, the sightlines for uncontrolled intersections are. So it wouldn't be for driveways, but it could be for intersections.
Okay, and not, okay. All right, thank you.
Anyone have any other questions up here before I open it up for public comment? Okay, Gloria Stofan. So everybody gets 3 minutes on this one. Let's try to stick to the agenda item, which is the ordinance for oversized vehicles. If you have something else to speak about that's sort of relational, you can touch upon it, but also we have an oral communication section later. So we've got Gloria, we've got Suzanne, and Carolyn Jaramillo.
I apologize, I didn't write it down properly, but it is item 11. Again, I'm Gloria Stofan, longtime resident of Pacifica. Concerns in the community of motorhome residents and homeless are issues that I've come to you quite often. And it goes way back, let me tell you. Anyway, I appreciate the fact that City Council directed city staff to create a task force to study the issues and to give recommendations back to City Council so that the city would take action based on those recommendations. With this in mind, I come before you to seriously consider and support permitted parking of motorhomes, basically what the police chief spoke about. The permitted parking will only be done on designated streets in the ordinance. Those motorhome residents who are interested will be vetted by the Pacifica Resource Center with the goal to find permanent housing. The Pacifica Resource Center and the police department will and should work together on implementing such a plan. My understanding is that the Pacifica Resource Center is ready to dedicate 1 outreach worker to the permit program and has funding for waste and trash disposal. Please do consider this plan as a solid option that can be implemented ASAP. But now I'm thinking it might not be till June. Well, maybe before June, I don't know. Anyway, this will benefit the community and give solid direction to the police department as to who can park on our streets of Pacifica. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. Suzanne, Carolyn Jaramillo, and Chris Redfield.
Good evening, Suzanne Moore, Pacific Manor resident. Every day, we make decisions often based on core beliefs we develop early in life, and we all likely know how fear impacts decision-making. Theorists suggest that if we want to expand our beliefs and challenge fear, we can, 1, focus on how we are alike rather than different, 2, focus on solutions rather than problems, and 3, create positive momentum to effect change. Let me take a moment to apply this to Pacifica's concern for our homeless. How are we alike? San Mateo County has already clarified this. They've done a motorhome survey, and many in motorhomes are long-term residents that only recently they were housed in our town. And like all of us, they desire permanent housing. And in their publication, Get Healthy San Mateo County, the county states stable, affordable housing protects health, especially the health of vulnerable populations like our children, and that housing is the cornerstone of health for the entire community. What are possible solutions for Pacifica's homeless? We've discussed them a little bit tonight. Participants in the November Task Force Forum makes it clear that they supported programs with pathways to housing. There are status of 3 programs with frameworks that have been developed by our resource center. First, the Waste Dump Pilot Program, and this was listed as the greatest concern among Pacificans. And the pilot for a local waste disposal service has received funding. The Resource Center will be hiring outreach workers to facilitate access to both local waste disposal and case management for permanent housing. Rotational shelters. This possible program continues to seek volunteer hosts to provide overnight indoor and outdoor shelter for known and vetted clients of the Resource Center with on-site supervision and case management for permanent housing. It's hoped this could be piloted next fall before winter weather arrives. And thirdly, our street parking permits. This model would perhaps be developed within weeks. It's within the purview and scope of the Resource Center. It would be extended to known clients of the Resource Center, would provide identified spaces for motorhomes, increase safety, and again, provide a way forward for permanent housing. How can Pacifica create the momentum for positive change? The necessary vision and leadership rests here with the City Council and staff. The Resource Center has aggressively sought funding and created model frameworks to reduce our homeless numbers in the best way possible, to find them housing. Community will is needed to make this happen, and that requires leadership and support of this council. The safe parking permit would potentially be initiated quickly. I suggest we delay the ordinance to give the Resource Center and City time to get this program in place. We're in this together. We benefit when we help each other, and fear dissipates when we get to know one another. We are not hopeless in the face of complex problems. Let's get to work and make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. Carolyn Jaramillo, Chris Redfield, Dan Sedgink.
Good evening, Council. Carolyn Jaramillo, longtime Pacifica resident. Tonight, I would like to ask 3 things of you. One, that you approve and support the parking permit plan put forth by Councilmember Mary Beer, and also to support the rotational shelter plan put forth, and it's supported by the Pacifica Resource Center. The other item is I would like to ask you to go back to the campaign that was initiated here in the city, Pacificans Stand Against Hate. I think this is a great time for all of you, for all of us, and I know the faith community is stepping up to this challenge of speaking out against any kind of hateful rhetoric against homelessness, against poverty, against people that are suffering, people that are living in motorhomes because they can't afford to pay rent. This is an excellent opportunity for all of us to put that campaign into action, not just words, but to really make it so that Pacifica really does stand against hate. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. We've got Chris Redfield, Dan Sedgink, Aaron Macias.
Good evening, staff and council. I have pushed, urged, and actively pursued this ordinance for over 2 years. This ordinance is the keystone to begin to actively manage this issue. I want to gratefully acknowledge the immense work of all staff and council members, not only on this ordinance, but the ongoing workload they are tasked with. I also want to acknowledge the mention of the Unhoused and Pacifica Task Force, the Pacifica Resource Center, the city, and the church representatives in staff's report. In the preliminary task report to council in December, the consensus statement regarding this ordinance was, and I quote, "The task force is well aware of the need to make changes to the city's parking ordinances. We, along with everyone else, want to take steps to pursue Pacifica from becoming a destination for the homeless from all over the region and beyond. We are also as concerned as the rest of our community members to take steps to ensure the health and safety of all of our citizens." End quote. This is the first step, a step forward. In its simplest form, it is merely a tool if necessary. I have full faith it will be administered fairly. I also have full faith council will not only show their will, but their wisdom to pass this ordinance unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Dan Stedjink, Aaron Macias, Roger Massio.
Good evening, council members. I'm Dan Stedjink. I appreciate what Chief Steidel said on the towing of the RVs. When should we tow these RVs? Anybody who's been to Berkeley in the last 5 years will tell you, never. Go to Annie Bridge in Berkeley. Look under there. Look at the wheelchairs under there. Look at the people, the walking wounded, walking around there. I'm not going to quote Matthew 25 here about the good people and the bad people being separated and Jesus saying, half of you clothed me and fed me and led me in, and half of you didn't, and you're going to hell. But you can look that up if you want to. I've heard a lot of talk here, and I've seen this list of streets, table 1 on your thing. Roads designated, no oversized parking allowed. The Coastal Commission has clearly, firmly, and transparently stated this ordinance will not be applicable in the coastal zone. They've had extensive talks with the city attorney, city manager, and they've clearly stated this. The idea that they're coming in late, overreaching, haven't mentioned this at all, is pure fantasy. The Coastal Commission clearly, firmly, transparently stated their wishes, their decision on this subject before the first vote. Pedro Point, Rockaway, Sharp Park, the ocean side of Manor. These are the neighborhoods that's going to get screwed. Everyone who's ever played musical chairs knows what happens when there's 10 kids and 9 chairs. What happens when there's 10 kids and 5 chairs? You got 2 kids trying to sit in every chair. That's what's going to happen. I counted 260 oversized vehicles in Pacifica. At 3 o'clock every day, every one of those construction vehicles coming home from work is going to go park in Pedro Point. It's going to go park in Rockaway. It's going to go park in Sharp Park. I have a feeling that's going to look great on the Palmetto streetscape. The Samtrans lot, it's not mentioned at all. As it is now, there's 3 or 4 guys parking there almost every single night. Generators running 24/7. Again, as objectionable as that is, last year there was a tire fire in there. Some folks were lighting tires in Samtrans lot. Objectionable as 4 guys in motorhomes are, what's it going to be like when they get their motorhomes towed? And instead of 4 guys in motorhomes, you've got 4 guys living under that Goodwill trailer there, which should go also, by the way. But Coastal Commissions have spoken. You need to specifically ask the city attorney right now what the Coastal Commission's view on this ordinance is. They've firmly spoken. The coastal zone will not be affected by this ordinance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. Aaron Macias, Roger Massio, and Ellen Haig.
Good evening, council, staff, Chief Steidel. Thank you to the task force, first of all. And also the hard work of our attorney. I think she's done an outstanding job. I don't want to talk about the scare tactics previously mentioned. I'm here to speak on behalf of myself and many others who have voiced their concerns. I do urge you to follow the professional recommendations by your staff, move to waive the second reading, and vote to adopt the ordinance. As the report stated, areas not covered are mostly covered by heavily impacted residents parking on their own streets, and plans for the much-needed bicycle lanes throughout the city of Pacifica. The actual implementation of the ordinance is many months away, and there is no reason to delay its adoption tonight. Adoption tonight further allows those in need of resources who are eager to work collaboratively with the PRC to be properly vetted, to build better relationships with caseworkers who will be more successful in working with those Pacifica residents and eliminate the health and safety issues that are growing while mitigating the financial stressors associated with this growing concern. Please waive the reading and adopt the ordinance tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Roger Massio, Ellen Haig, and Delia McGrath.
Hello, my name is Roger Maceo. I live in Pacifica for the last 35 years. Thank you, City Council and staff, for all your hard work. I hope you will adopt this ordinance tonight. Something has to be done about the increasing number of RVs being parked on our streets. It's not safe, it's not healthy, and it's horrible. This has been going on far too long. We need to come up with some real and permanent affordable housing for our Pacifica residents in need. I think it's the responsibility of the county and the state to pay for it. I know the signs are expensive, but they're cheaper than the police enforcement and all the time it's taking up for everyone to deal with the complaints that come in. Thank you.
Thank you. Ellen, Delia, and Tiger Big Stick is my last card.
Good evening, City Council and City staff. I'm Ellen Haig, longtime resident in Pacifica. Regarding the oversized vehicle ordinance, I find it really regrettable that you are choosing to push it through as soon as possible. I understand you are trying to address the concerns and complaints of some in the community. There are solutions to address these concerns. For the sake of all who will be affected, I urge you to provide leadership and work with the Pacifica Resource Center, the task force, and the churches who have been meeting regularly. I've been following this from the very beginning, and it's very disappointing the City of Pacifica hasn't taken any responsibility itself to provide shelter or a safe parking area. Finally, if it's expediency you're seeking by banning the 30 or 40 motorhomes with people living in them to keep a roof over their head, I suspect you are prolonging your solution and possibly creating more problems. Pacificans who own oversized vehicles may be surprised and upset when they discover their oversized vehicles will not be allowed on the street in front of their own home except for a very limited time. Please work with the PRC and task force before banning oversized vehicles and homeless people living in their homes, in their motorhomes. Thank you.
Thank you. Delia McGrath and Tiger Big Stick.
Good evening, Council and Mayor Martin and City staff. My name is Delia McGrath, and I've been asked by a person in our community who has been in an RV situation in the past to read her short story of one of the worst days of our lives. Her name is Monique, and her daughter Leslie gave her version of what happened to the two of them several years ago. This is Monique's version. My short story of one of the worst days of my life, the day our home, our RV, got taken from us, my version. About 8 years ago, my child and I suddenly and unexpectedly became homeless. I had worked since I was 16 years old and had been on my own for over 20 years. Never in my wildest dreams did I ever think I would end up hopeless. I knew I was always going to make it. I was sure then one always helping other people out. Surprise, one bad investment and that was it. We had no money or home anymore. We were lucky enough to have had a little old RV loaned to us. That had been our new home for about 4 years. Then the worst thing happened to us. We were losing our home again. This time we didn't move out. It was early when we were on our way back from our morning visit to McDonald's to use their facilities. We tried to minimize our water usage, so only used them for emergencies. We had been jumping around town, you know, the 72-hour rule, for a short while with no problems until recently. Our tags had expired, no new money for it, so now the PPD has decided to target us. I swear they looked for us. Anyway, then it happened. I can see that I'm not going to get through this, so I'm going to skip some of it just so I can get to her final statement. While talking with the officers, an older woman came out from the condos. She had been the one to report that we were there. And we questioned, what did we ever do to her? So as quickly as we could, we threw our boxes together and tried to make the best of it. The whole day I was a wreck. In closing, please remember that the RVs aren't just vehicles. They have people like you inside, people who are worth taking a chance on. A little hope goes a long way when you've got no hope left in you. Since you did not keep your words of not passing the ordinance until a program was in place, the very least you should do is allow for a permit program to be set up ASAP. Thank you.
Thanks, Delia. And the last card is Tiger Big Stick.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. I'm Tiger Jazz Twirls Big Stick of Pacifica. I've been contemplating this, and I'm not sure how much of it I want to. I think, because first of all, I don't want to talk about people living in their RVs. I think it's been talked about a lot, and it's been said, and I've said things in the past, and I'm interested in other aspects of this. And as I'm listening to everyone talk, what I'm not hearing is, I'm thinking about the experiences of my neighbors. I had a conversation with a customer, and she was like, well, all my neighbors are talking to me and they're scared because they have RVs, or they're scared because they have business trucks that fall under the category, and what are these people who have small businesses going to do with their trucks? And the place I keep coming back to is the idea of permitting. And again, if you take that other thing out of the equation, just people who have small businesses with oversized vehicles. And my neighbors, my childhood neighbor down the street who has his RV parked in front of his house for half my lifetime now, and it's never been a problem. By the way, I live on top of a hill, a very steep hill in the back of the valley, and I appreciate that a lot of this is very genuinely safety-oriented, and there's very good safety reasons. But at the top of my hill, I don't see a lot of bikers come through. There are no buses that come through, and as I hear about 200 signs that are going to be going up around town, I remember my experience up in Higgins when I was searching up there and seeing those sign placements, and I'm wondering if, at least to my sensibility, 200 signs aren't going to be more of an eyesore than the handful of RVs we have. And that's a genuine question. And at the top of Banyan, where the only person with an RV does not live in it, and there's no bicyclists up there, and I walk to work and there's another RV somewhere in the middle of, there's probably more people riding a bike down Alicante, but somebody who we were all praising, who was retiring last week, one of your city employees who's now a retiree, and may be enjoying it thoroughly. I saw him this morning, in fact, this afternoon as I was getting back from lunch. But there's his RV right there parked along the side. And it would be really nice if there was a little more study about where there are actual safety threats, the likelihoods, and whether or not that can be combined with the permitting process so they unite in real time. And I think I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiger. I have no more cards. Anyone else? Nope, okay. So I'll bring it back to council. Anyone have any comments based on what we've heard or otherwise?
Yeah, I do.
Mary.
So there was a couple things brought up that I was going to ask for some clarification around. One of them was the decision from the Coastal Commission. Can I get some clarification about that?
Yes, my office has been in contact with the legal counsel for the Coastal Commission. They have made clear that it is their opinion that adoption of this ordinance would be considered development under the Coastal Act because it would change the intensity or density of use. We disagree with that position. We do not believe that adoption of this ordinance would change the intensity or density of use because the city is in fact not prohibiting parking, just limiting parking to certain types of vehicles in certain areas. So it's not that there will not be parking there, it's that the parking may be limited to vehicles that are under a certain size. In our discussions with the Coastal Commission, they have said that they did not ask that we not adopt the ordinance tonight. They did suggest that we file for a CDP, which we can do at any time prior to the implementation, which, as you heard tonight, is going to be, most likely around June. So we will still be in contact with the Coastal Commission. As I said, we were just able to get some definitive response from their legal counsel today. I plan to continue to work with the Coastal Commission staff to exchange correspondence as to why we believe the way we do with regard to the definition of development, and hear more from the Coastal Commission as to why they believe as they do. But in any event, the Coastal Commission made clear that we could, if we do end up agreeing with them, that we could file for a CDP. They said that would not be a very long process. So it should not be an obstacle to adopting the ordinance tonight.
Thank you. And another point that came up was the Sam Trans lot. That does not belong to the city, does it? The Sam Trans lot?
No, I don't believe it does, but I would ask staff to confirm that.
No, I do not believe it does. It's also considered a public off-street parking facility, much like the San Marlo lot that Councilmember O'Neill asked about further. This ordinance covers streets, not public off-street parking facilities.
Okay, thank you so much. And then I have another question about bicycle lanes. Can you talk about what's planned for the near future, or do we have any information about that? Ryan, I guess that's for you.
Sure. So just last week, the Parks, Beach, and Recreation Committee passed the draft plan, and so we're hoping to come to you guys next month sometime to discuss the plan. It is in its draft form. There's recommendations in there. It's about 100 pages long.
Okay. It would be great to be able to see that, and thanks for all the work from the Park and Rec Commission. I appreciate that. Let's see. I know there's more, but does anyone else have anything? Any questions?
I don't have any red lights. Anyone?
Actually, something that Chief Stidle said just now triggered a question in my mind about the off-street parking lots. And that kind of goes to my earlier question about driveways, because the thought I had was driveways in and out of off-street parking lots. And these would be parking lots that are open to the public, like at the library on Sanchez Library on Terra Nova Boulevard, or in and out of a shopping mall area, that kind of thing. What would be the vehicle, so to say, to address concerns about curb painting and sightlines with that? Since this is a streets ordinance, is it a separate type of ordinance? Is it already covered within city code? Can you elucidate that, please, for me?
Can also just ask, can you differentiate between private lots such as Lindemar Center and public lots, which would be right here in front, or City Hall, or Park and Ride there?
Well, engineering staff can talk about the painting, and the public works staff, regarding the lots. So if we're talking about a public off-street parking facility, like a city lot, like you are correct, it would be this lot. For example, the South Rockaway lot, a public off-street parking, something that's owned by the public, something that's owned by the city. Whereas Lindemar Center, for example, or Manor Center, those are private property lots, while they're still considered off-street parking, those are controlled by, again, by private people that own that property. We do have an ordinance in place that covers private property like that in commercial areas that says you cannot park any vehicle that is not in conjunction with the business, meaning you can't park your vehicle there and, or in this case, just for the sake of discussion, because we're talking about motorhomes, you could not park a motorhome there not in conjunction with a business, according to the municipal code. Whereas in a public lot, you could do so.
My question had to do with parking on the street near the public ingress and egress to those spaces.
So, council member, typically private property owners would request engineering to go out and take a look. So on a case-by-case basis, we will go out there and take a look at the request and evaluate and do the red curb. There is a charge to it, but we do go out and we'll investigate and evaluate.
And for city-owned properties, that would be something that's within the purview of the city and your department?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
I would like to clarify, we are talking about oversized vehicles, not just motorhomes, right? So I want to make that real clear, since it's the safety issues in check here. I think it would be good for us to talk about the temporary permitting for recreational vehicles that's recommended here in the staff report. I think might be a good thing to add in. And then how can we acknowledge the small business owners with their vehicles? Could that be part of the permitting process as well?
If I could talk, I want to clarify a couple things. I wasn't sure, or make sure that we're on the same page.
Okay.
The discussion that we put in for the permit program had to do with concerns that were raised and questions that were asked, and the direction we got from the council at the last meeting on this topic regarding, I'll give you the scenario. I own a recreational vehicle and I am bringing it to my house and I'm going on a trip. We initially said 2 hours and everybody agreed 2 hours is enough. Bring it up to 8 hours to give people the opportunity to wash, load, unload, whatever they have to do to prepare to use their vehicle for whatever they're going to use it for, with the idea that staff could come back with a permit program that the owners of the RV would be able to work with the police department, allow them to park their vehicle past the 8-hour limit overnight so they could prepare to go on a trip or whatever they're using their vehicles for. And what was the second portion?
The small business owners with their trucks.
The small business, it depends on the trucks. Right now, if there is a oversized vehicle, and I definitely cannot say this for every vehicle, this is not a blanket statement, but this is a statement that I would say probably the high majority of commercial vehicles that are oversized are likely over 10,000 pounds in gross vehicle weight, which are already illegal to park in a residential area to begin with.
Okay, thank you.
Again, that's definitely not every vehicle, I'm certain, but a high majority of them.
I have a question for City Attorney. So what happens if our CDP gets denied from the Coastal Commission?
Well, in the event that were to happen, then theoretically we would not be able to implement the ordinance. But
we would not be able to implement it in the coastal zone only?
Yes,
or
in the
whole-
coastal zone.
Okay.
But as I said, I think we have plenty of time to work this out with the Coastal Commission. I did not get the impression that we wouldn't receive a CDP. The issue that I'm discussing with the Coastal Commission is whether or not we even have to apply for a CDP. And because I don't agree that it is in fact development, I also believe that in the event we voluntarily choose, even though we're not obligated to file for a CDP, I don't believe that it would be difficult for the Coastal Commission to approve that. So,
Okay. So Lindemar is a state beach, so we operate it, but we don't own it, right? And there's no overnight parking there. Right? Technically no overnight parking there.
Well, we used to, there was a time period when we used to close that off, and then we were told by the Coastal Commission that we could no longer do that. So we don't control overnight parking in Lindemar Beach.
Okay, so same goes for, but Rockaway and Sharp Park, we have more control over, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So if the coastal development permit gets denied, or we're not able to work it out, then are people able to sleep overnight in the Lindemar lot?
Well, again, we don't have any control over that.
Right,
in
so
terms
that
of-
would be probably a
Yeah,
yes.
Yes.
Okay.
As it stands now, we cannot control that.
And then in Sharp Park, we did put up signs for no overnight parking here, and it's maybe loosely observed. And then, and I know there are signs at Rockaway also, but it's not observed or cannot be enforced because we can't get those folks that are in, at least the two that are always there running generators.
Right, they go out at night, and they observe the no overnight parking, but they're parked all day, correct?
Okay, so I'm probably going to repeat myself here from what I said at my last meeting. I believe that Pacifica is in, well, we live in California, and to me, California was always sort of the land of the free, and you could just park freely. In New Jersey, where we vacationed, you weren't allowed to park freely. You needed a pass or a permit. You couldn't even walk onto the beach without a little tag. You still can't. So I always had a special place in my heart for California, and I knew I was going to live here one day. And now we are sort of turning into how I grew up. I feel like as Pacifica, a surfing destination, a global surfing destination, it is no longer going to be able to be catered to those folks who want to be here for a couple days and surf and just rent an RV. Coming from Italy or Ireland, I have friends from Peru, same thing. So they're not going to be able to stay here. So that's number one. I feel like our ordinance is basically like locals rule, and it's like off my wave, kook. You can't even park here. So that's sort of my surfing analogy, and I surf, so I have a kinship towards that analogy. So I feel like we're going to lose some business here. We just opened up a shop owner. She's a world champion longboarder it's called Traveler down at Pedro Point, and she caters to those kinds of people who want to board their locker and then go surf all the way up and down the coast and be able to come here and stay for a couple days, and you board your board. And you got a board locker, you got a hot shower, you got a sauna, and those folks, she's probably going to lose business because of that. So that's a bummer. I also feel that this ordinance is an anti-homeless measure. I strongly believe that this really, is. We have an opportunity here to lead the way, and I think instead we're just playing follower, and we're kicking the can down the road, so all of the surrounding cities that don't have these bans will suffer because we just followed suit instead of being the example. So I am bummed about that also. I want to thank the staff and PD and the task force members. You're all working so hard, and the religious community who's making special accommodations to even have discussions and entertain some of these ideas that were once considered wild. But I would ask everyone in this community to really start thinking about the world that we live in. Today is not going to be the world that we live in tomorrow. And I'd like to actually have some say in that. So we have the opportunity to create this amazing space, and just like libraries have changed, cities have to change, and the way we we live has to change. You know, there are folks who are retired who take on roommates now. That's really common. And so why wouldn't we share our other spaces? I also believe that the city of Pacifica needs to have some skin in this game if we are going to implement a parking permit process. I also think that the process has to be easy. And when I say easy, I mean also online and accessible to folks who are A, retired, maybe B, not computer literate, and be able to be done far enough in advance or remote that somebody who travels for 6 months out of the year can do it from a library in Arizona and make sure that they have their pass to come back and unload their vehicle in front of their home. And I also believe that 8 hours is an absolute insane amount of time. It's in a short amount of time for somebody to load and unload, go over to Redwood City, pick up their vehicle, come back. And especially for probably the majority of these folks are maybe a little bit further up there in age and maybe move a little slower than some others. And they need more than 8 hours. They need actually 2 days. I don't think we're being fair to a community that probably was built on the backs of those who made the RVs, in which we are trying to ban. So I am pleading with my fellow council. I know I'm in the minority, but I would ask that you would consider extending those vehicle hours to, to be 24, 48 or 24 at the least. And I would also ask my fellow council members to consider delaying any implementation until we can get a permit process in place and a safe parking program in place, whatever that may look like. But something, we have to give something if we're taking away. And Sue Varlas.
Someone suggested that we put this off and delay it. We've been talking about this since 2018. We determined the task force had 6 months. We extended the time already to the end of March, and now actually the time period is going to be in July. So we've extended and extended and extended, and I have really yet to see a plan. This past week, the members in Willowbrook Estates, all the people, apparently 100% of them signed a petition against using the church parking lot and the interior of the church because they were not even notified that anything was going to happen there. The council wasn't notified ahead. We didn't learn about it until we received all these emails from people telling us that they were unhappy. So that does have to do with the oversized vehicles. It is private property. That is a different situation. We hear a lot about the private property, people parking in different locations on private property that we really can't do anything about. And what we're talking about here is the oversized vehicles, is the safety hazards. Drive down Oceana. Try to see if a bus is passing you at the same time. And you have to go all the way around to get around the oversized vehicles that are parked there. Trucks, trailers, many different types of oversized vehicles that park there. Maybe the permit process can be a little bit longer. I would agree with that on a permitting process.
What do you mean longer?
Like the 24 hours.
Oh, okay.
Instead of 8, because I can understand, we've had a lot of emails about that too, people who own vehicles and don't think that 8 hours is enough time. 2 was really too little, but 24 seems like a better idea to me. And, I think we have to continue. There was a reason why we brought this up, because everything takes a long time. Thank you.
Sue Beckmeyer.
I have a question with regard to the timeline issue. We've been advised by staff that implementation will require longer than till March 30th. And I recall when we discussed this in December, there was some talk about making a different date or putting a resolution in before we would approve it to address any of those type of concerns. Can you speak to that for a second?
Yes, and that is in the ordinance before you for adoption, and that is, the effective date is March 30th unless the council adopts by resolution an act to extend the effective date. So the council has the option of extending the date beyond March 30th by adoption of a resolution.
And so would that resolution be something we do at another time, or I'm not clear how that meshes
Yes,
with what's
it would
in
be a
front of us.
resolution that we could adopt at any time between now and March 30th, extending the effective date.
I see. So perhaps when there's more knowledge about
Exactly.
when the signs are coming in, how long it's going to take, or such things as that.
Exactly.
Okay, that answers that question. Thank you. On packet page 377, there's the last paragraph under next steps. I think this is what Chief Steidel was referring to a minute ago when he was answering a question, and it had to do with the overnight parking of RV owners and, I mean, of the vehicles, owners of RVs who are using them for recreational purposes and had communicated with us that the 2 hours was no way long enough and 8 hours was not long enough either. I'm thinking that I would like to direct staff to work on that piece of a permit process for a 24-hour. And what I need to know is if there's a desire to parcel that one off, and how, I guess what I'm trying to say is how do we address the various permit options that we discussed at the December meeting? There are a number of them. And so do we just take them one by one, or would it make sense to try to gang them up into one other ordinance? What's your thought on that?
Well, I think it is probably better to put them into one ordinance, but, you know, it really, I think we can make anything work. So, but that would be my recommendation.
Okay. Well, then I guess my comment then is I think that that would be a place to start with the permitting that we've discussed, and it seems like one that we could relatively easily obtain the information needed to gather, you know, either from other local jurisdictions or from citizens that have already proffered information to get that started. So I would propose that we get the 24-hour permit for owners of RVs to be able to park for 24 hours.
And that's differentiating from the other kind of permit processes that I'm interested in creating moving forward.
Right.
Cool. Okay.
But not excluding them. Just saying that's one that seems to have emerged pretty quickly.
Mary, did you have anything?
Yeah, so I just kind of wanted to make a statement, like a blanket statement, so people understand where I'm coming from. So being up here is very difficult, especially when you come up here and you have these ideals that are like deep in your heart. And you just, you know, so for me, I just really want to help the vulnerable people in our community. And at the same time, as part of my duties, I have to address the entire community. And so that is a very difficult thing to do. So I just want to state that right here and now. Also, I'm ready to move forward with the ordinance, just so everyone's clear on that. And I've also asked for information about a permitting process that can help people who will be connected to Pacifica Resource Center, participating in case management, and on their way to get housed. And so that's a different subject, and I've asked for that to be put on a future agenda. So I'm looking forward to information about that, not only from city staff, but from our community as well. So just know that that has already been requested. So just so everyone's very clear about where I stand and why I'm voting the way that I'm voting. And sorry if I misunderstood you, Chief.
Mary, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So the permit process that you're talking about is for parking also?
It is, yeah, but it's a totally separate.
Just give me, your elevator pitch on that so I can connect the dots?
I can. So this permitting process would allow a certain number of permits to be issued to folks who want to participate in case management through Pacifica Resource Center and get housed. And so they would be allowed to park for up to 29 days in certain areas while they're getting case management. And then they would have to rotate, because if they're parked for longer than 29 days, it's like a residency thing. So there's a lot of details that we have to work out. I know Anita Reese at the Resource Center is working out she's got a full outline going, so a lot of people are doing work on it. We've been talking to the city attorney. So because we don't have all the details, we're gonna need to have some kind of a study session or some kind of discussion point here so we can talk about it publicly. But that's what I'm talking about. Is that more clear?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so then just to summarize, what I think I heard was there are two different parking permit processes that are being discussed. The first one is one that's associated with case management through the Resource Center, okay? That's up to potentially 29 days through a process, approved process. The other one is a permit for parking of recreational vehicles.
Oversized vehicles.
Oversized vehicles. And is this for loading and unloading only, or could, the plumber who has an oversized tank also apply for this because he has to do some serious work at the house?
The program hasn't been developed by staff yet, so input from the council in giving direction would be very helpful. My understanding prior to your last comment was that it was going to be a permitting program that would allow oversized vehicles that seek to stay for loading and unloading only. That was my understanding. But that can certainly be expanded. And it was anticipated that permitting process would be necessary to allow recreational vehicle owners to keep their vehicles in front of their residence for loading and unloading.
Okay.
That was just my understanding. Not that it has to stay that way, but if there's direction to make it broader than that, it would be helpful for us to know that now.
So that was also my understanding, but as I was saying it, I started to wonder about other things. So if we give direction tonight to move forward with a permit for parking for unloading, how do we address situations like that, right? Or are they just exempt because they're doing work? Just a thought.
I think if there's, a consensus on the council, we don't need a definitive motion or response now. It would be good to know that you would like us to explore that. We can explore that, and when we bring this back to you, we will have options for you.
Yeah, okay. So I think we have consensus that we all want that explored. Is that what I heard? Okay, great. And then Mary's got control of the case management parking permit thing. And then the third thing, which is not specifically on here, but it was talked about, was safe parking program. And I know the city is peripherally involved, but that is also something that the city will probably have to have some skin in the game about. So I'm
sorry, I'm not understanding that last point. Because is that different than what Councilmember Beer is suggesting? And if so, how?
It's different.
And
One is, safe parking would be a designated lot where the RVs can stay overnight for a definite period of time.
I see.
Her permitted parking is designated on-street parking with a permit that they have to register for case management.
Okay,
Two
got it,
different
thank you.
animals.
Yeah, so safe parking program, there's one in,
I'm sorry.
East Palo Alto, I think, and, okay, so that's the other one. So that's called safe parking program. Okay, so we're probably going to get a motion soon, but before I do, I wanted to ask if there's any interest in making that 24 hours, 48 hours?
Changing that from 24 to 48?
Yeah, I think we got consensus on 24, but I'm just doing one last little shout out for 48 hours.
24?
48 seems an awful long time. Let's say that someone comes home from work, they pick it up at 5, 24 hours means 5 o'clock the next evening.
Yeah.
I think, maybe 36, just because, not trying to be compromised, but,
I'll take 36.
5 to 5 and,
I've moved across the country 3
Yeah,
times and
so-
taken this type of stuff seriously, so 36, so I got a 36?
That's fine.
going once, going twice.
I'm fine with 36.
So you're saying not 24, not 48, but 36 hours is
Yes.
how long you can park your RV at your home to load and unload it?
Yes,
I don't support that.
okay.
With a permit.
I feel like it's excessive. And my concern about that is that is going to open the door and create a scenario where, well, if you can park your RV there for loading and unloading for 36 hours, can't you have your friends visit and park there for 36 hours? I just don't want to see that. That is not one of the things I'm looking for here. I'm looking for safety, and I'm already worried about this. It's like, how safe is it? Is it safe? Is it not safe? It's safe if you're doing it with a permit, right? I mean, we want to minimize it, but within reason. And that's why I proposed 24 hours. To me, that seems sufficient. If it's not sufficient, I think in the course of bringing something back, staff will elucidate those items that make it not sufficient. We'll have comment from the public, undoubtedly, an email, undoubtedly. So I think that 36 is excessive.
That's fine.
I'll go back to the 24.
Yeah, that's fine. We can revisit it, and if we got a lot of complaints because, whatever, we can look at 36 later on. That's fine. I'll go with 24.
Oh, so you changed your mind. We already had 3 here.
What do you mean we had 3 for 36?
Yeah, we had 3 for
Oh,
36.
okay, well then I'll go 36. I'll be cheap. I'm cheap.
Anyway,
All right, so we have 3 for consensus on 36.
has to be a motion.
So
I miscounted.
I don't have any other comments up here. Are you interested in a summary before, there's going to be a motion here, but is there anything?
No, because the motion, the formal motion is to adopt the ordinance. You are also, as part of the discussion, giving direction to staff. I think we have the direction. So as long as your motion is simply what is in the agenda and the staff report, that's all we need, because you have, at the end of your motion, you can just say, along with the direction that you've received from council at the dais. But really, the only formal motion we need tonight is the motion to adopt the ordinance.
And then just to be clear again, one more time for the public, that citations cannot be issued until all the signs are up, right? So if the ordinance goes into effect on March 31st, it could take 3 months after that for all of it to get into place. So citations cannot be issued until that.
Correct.
30 days after the signs are posted.
30 days after the signs are
Warnings.
posted.
Issue warning citations
Gotcha.
for 30 days after.
Okay. I just wanted
Wait,
it
let
to
me be clear.
for the public.
Did I hear you say warning citations would be issued
For the first,
after the signs are up for
Yes.
30 days?
Correct.
yes.
Then citations would, am I right?
Correct.
And it's thought that the maximum length of time at this point, because you confidently put that forward, is till June. Is that correct? you're feeling that that's a reasonable amount of time, or are you feeling that's like, it probably won't be June, or you don't know yet?
A little bit of all of that, but it's variable at this point. We feel comfortable with that timeline, but I listed some bullet points there where it could get thrown off.
And you'll keep us apprised.
Of course.
So I'd like to make a motion that we approve consent agenda items 7 and 11 with, for item 11, added direction to bring back a permit process that includes 36 hours of parking. Is that what you agreed to? 24, 48, 36, what is?
36,
or
36.
An amount of time?
Do I have a second?
Second.
Please vote. Okay, so we will move on to where we are. And we're going to move on to oral communications. All right, I've got a bunch of yellow cards up here, starting with Jonathan Markham, John Keener, and Jim Dune.
Actually, Council, I want to make sure that as part of that motion, we also move to adopt the resolution. Next in order, identifying the list of streets.
Oh, that's right, there was a resolution besides the ordinance, I'm
Yes.
sorry. Yes. Do you want me to restate it?
I just want to make sure that that was part of the motion. I just wanted to clarify that for the
The
record.
resolution as well as the ordinance,
Yes.
yes. Yes? Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Orals.
Thanks. Okay, Jonathan, you ready? Great.
Yeah.
Good evening, council members. I'm Jonathan Markham. I'm the pastor of New Life Christian Fellowship. Been living in Pacifica for about 15 years. And I want to thank you, the council, for, as a member of the in-house task force, I want to thank you for providing us with some time to make that's necessary for us to work on solutions for those who would find themselves victims of what we are calling a safety ordinance. In the Unhoused Task Force, we're working hard on a range of proposals. Despite the clearly demonstrable success of shelter and safe parking experiments, for instance, all of those who participated in the experiment in St. Peter's in 2016, every single one of them have now been housed. The search for and negotiations around locations for such a provision will clearly take some time. However, the establishment of a permitting process for carefully qualified applicants is a relatively straightforward project. Given the fact that a safety ordinance of this type has never, so far as I can tell, been raised for, despite the proliferation of oversized vehicles and RVs all over Pacifica, we would ask the council to give urgent consideration to the preparation of a permitting process to be in place before the new ordinance comes into force, thus providing some hope for those who are at best the victims, if not actually the targets of this ordinance. I believe it's worthy of consideration since being a compassionate community is one of our declared objectives. Whether such a community should be defined by the attention it gives to the complainers, protesters, and squeaky wheels who take 5 minutes to write an angry email as compared to those who take the time to attend your meetings and communicate with you in person? Or should it be defined by the priority it gives to finding ways to care for, provide, and protect the most needy and disadvantaged members of our community? Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Council, and staff. Really good to see you all again. I'm going to talk about permitted parking also, and I kind of got scooped by your discussion on the last item, but here goes. And so, I hope that you will agendize and discuss a permit system for motorhomes to park in Pacifica. And it would allow them to park on streets not designated as too narrow by the oversized vehicle ordinance that you just passed. Candidates to receive the permits would be vetted by the Pacifica Resource Center, for example, to ensure that they will make progress toward permanent housing. 20 to 25 permits maybe, who knows? Permits would be issued by the city, probably by the police department. And with the permit, prohibitions against sleeping in a vehicle and parking for more than 72 hours in one spot would have to be waived. Plans for trash removal and waste disposal would also have to be implemented. And the permits would probably have to be for less than 30 days to avoid a tenancy issue, but possibly could be renewed. So the Resource Center would have to dedicate an outreach worker to the program, and from what I hear, they're willing to do that. And there's probably a lot of other details that I haven't thought of and nobody else has thought of yet to be hashed out. However, it has, a permit system has some promise of being implemented during the time, before the time that the oversized vehicle ordinance will actually be enforced. And we'll continue to work with the rotational shelter system as well, although that has a longer time frame. So thank you very much.
Thank you, John. We got Jim Dune, Marta Bookbinder, Tiger Big Stick.
Hello, my name is James Dunn. I live on Perez Drive here in Pacifica in a neighborhood that's called Willowbrook Estates. And we just recently learned that the church St. Edmunds is planning to set up a homeless camp at their site. And nobody in the neighborhood has received any other information on that at all. This is a residential neighborhood, and we're concerned that they're just going to bring these people up and dump them in our neighborhood. And it has a lot of people fearful. I'm sure everyone's aware of how these homeless camps turn out. But people who live in those neighborhoods are terrified. We don't feel it's fair for us to be put in this situation, to bring these people into our neighborhood and simply dump them. So I think the city council should consider this. Sorry, I don't have more information. Just found about this yesterday, so thank you.
Thank you. Marta, did she leave?
She did.
Okay, Tiger Big Stick, Anita Reese, and Sue DeGree.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. I'm Tiger Jazz Twirls Big Stick of Pacifica. Didn't plan on talking about it, but the way it's been described, that fear thing is really palpable, ain't it? And it seems like the thing that dismisses fear is when we have information. And I think that a part of the hard work that needs to happen for this to be a community that functions is that information starts being disseminated in a real way and communication happens in a real way. And I'm very sorry to hear one of the previous gentlemen speak of something that I think will really be an asset to our community in a way that, from that perspective, yeah, it is scary. But I don't think that what he thinks it is. And so there should be some communication happening so that what is what's being communicated. Since we were still talking a little bit about permits, apparently, and I forgot on the last one, I have family that does come to visit an RV from time to time. That's the vehicle they bring is their RV. And the RV park is a place they have absolutely parked, and then they go back and forth from the house. I've heard a rumor that perhaps that RV park is not as indefinite as we would hope it is, and hopefully that RV park will be there for a very long time. If it should happen that there needs to be an abandonment of that RV park, though, it would be nice to know that if my family comes to visit with their RV, maybe it's a family gathering even, which happens from time to time, my family has a place to rest their head right in front of my house, where again, there's no bicyclists or buses happening, and there would be a permit process available for family to stay with family. I wanted to throw that out there. So prior, I raised the idea that my company, I think the second or third biggest employer in Pacifica, might be going on strike. And we did hold a strike vote. Our company did vote that the contract they were offering was not something we wanted, to the tune of 95% of us voted to authorize a strike, at which point the company decided to resume negotiations. So today was the third round of those negotiations. There was a 2-day round, another 2-day round, and these are in the beginning of the year. And today was a 1-day round of negotiation. I get to contact my union rep tomorrow and find out how that went. But that's the state of that. In the meantime, my friend who's sleeping in a storefront, who works by me every day, is still sleeping there. He may have a way out of that. I have to figure out with my roommates what's going on. In the meantime, my other companion, who I brought with me tonight, who is out of a house right now, who's actually a department head, he has about 3 weeks to 5 weeks to wait for a place that will open up for him. In the meantime, he will be sleeping at my house tonight in my open room. And meanwhile, I got a call from a friend of mine who has a cousin who is in desperate need. She has some sort of a heart condition and 3 children. And so she contacted me, and I think I may be having that conversation with my roommate shortly. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiger. Anita Reese, Sue Degree, and Aaron Macias is the last card I have.
Hello, Anita Reese with the Pacifica Resource Center. So I thought that, we do more than homeless services, just so you know. But I thought I would address some of the concerns about homelessness right now. So the thing that's happening at St. Edmunds this week is a one-night test. We are recruiting folks now. There will be 5 people sleeping inside with staff. I will have my direct services manager there, a case manager there. I will be there, as will the vicar of St. Edmunds, to make sure that there are no issues or concerns that might happen. They will arrive sometime between 6:30 and 7. They will leave the next morning at 7. It is literally a place to have dinner, sleep, wake up, have breakfast, and leave. So as far as we know, it's still moving forward because it is the work of the church. We've provided that opportunity to them, and they've taken us up on it. This is something that we've been trying to move for quite a while because we know that a brick and mortar shelter isn't possible on the coast. And therefore, one of the ways to address homelessness in Pacifica, which is a real thing, is to offer a rotating shelter, which is successful both in Palo Alto, the city of Palo Alto, and on the peninsula side through a program called Home and Hope. So our goal is to find, and I've shared this at City Council many, many times, our goal is to find 5 locations that will take 1 week out of every 5 weeks during the winter months to host folks that we recruit to be a part of this program. All the while, they will be provided support to find housing. The goal always, always is housing. So we're looking for 2 outreach specialists to help with our outreach, our unhoused on the coast outreach work. So if anybody knows of anybody who is interested in helping the homeless and wants to help us move this work, please send them to our website, and the description and the process is there. We've also drafted a permitting process for folks with motorhomes, which I'm very excited to work with the city to try to figure out a way to implement that before the ordinance goes into place. But like I said, we do other things, so taxes are happening right now. We provide no-cost taxes. Volunteer tax preparers are certified by the IRS and tax law. We take appointments Wednesday evenings, Monday mornings, and we will be in the Manor Shopping Center in an e-bus to do taxes on site for folks who live in that community. Those appointments are first come, first serve. Show up, get your taxes done.
We're all very excited to have the bus here. It's coming down from Sacramento, so please check us out. Number 650-738-7470. Our website's pacresourcecenter.org. Thanks.
Thanks, Anita. Sue DeGree and Aaron Macias.
Good evening. Those of you who know me for 16 years know this is not a new advocacy, and I'm very pleased that City Council and City has stepped up each time, gotten this closer and closer to the top priority, and that is communication with our public to enable community building, communication through public forums where we can have dialogue and sit next to each other and look at each other's face and hear each other's points of view so we can talk back and forth, rather than the 3 minutes at the podium where that cannot happen. So how do you outreach for that? And in spite of what we've done already, I'm still very concerned about this. How do we outreach to people? So there's people my age and people younger that don't, well, excuse me, let me separate those things. There are people my age that don't use or can't use online stuff really well. Takes us an hour and a half and then blood pressure goes up. So how do you reach folks like that to let things know about very important things coming up, like sea level rise meetings, the planning about these things going on with our homeless situations? How does the community at large know about this? How does the community at large have an opportunity to sit together and chat? One time people were able to use the newspaper. That was a great help. I think 3/4 of the population used to subscribe to it, but over the years, the public has found that not as suffice method of enabling community building. So it's community building, reaching the people, enabling us to speak with each other so that we can work together for each other. Now we've gone from 300 feet to 500 feet in notification for things. That was a big help, and I hope that still continues. I believe we also went to enabling members of apartment complexes to know what's going on rather than only the owner who may live in some other country. So with the planning coming up for goal setting, again, could we please have it well advertised, very accessible, big room, ability to get there by public transportation, and enable the whole community to be part of this, because it is for us, and that's council's duty, is to enable all of us to be a community. Members of the public, encourage people, offer rides, offer to give flyers, tell people what you see online or hear on Nextdoor, and offer rides for young people too that can't drive or get to things. Thanks.
Thank you, Sue. And Aaron Macias, my last card.
Good evening again, Erin Macias, Pacifica. I want to speak to something since it has come up and it's fresh in the minds of everybody. So permits are a constant revenue source for well-managed cities, and we do need permits for various reasons. So here's my opinion to part of the permit problem that it's already surfaced. So we do rent an RV. 8 hours is definitely not long enough, and the liability doesn't change based on the number of minutes or hours it's parked while you're schlepping stuff in and out of there, and it's work. So the person who rents the RV names the city of Pacifica as an additional named insured. The city, or the permit requirement, the city, sets the value of the policy and sets the parameters for the permitted time. So for example, if I were to be required to have a $500,000 policy that names the city as the additional named insured, I call my insurance agent. I say, hey, this thing's going to be parked in front of my house for 4 days, 3 days, while I'm loading and unloading, and then I call them and I remove it off the policy, and it's probably going to cost me about $20. So yes, it's going to increase the cost of me renting an RV, but I do think that that's a really simple solution. We do need multiple categories of parking permits for oversized vehicles because they're different uses. So I do think this all can be accomplished with vision, planning, and community input. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. And I don't have any more yellow cards, so anyone have anything? Great. Okay, council communications. Mike O'Neill.
Let's see. I attended the LAFCO the LAFCO meeting, and they had a presentation on the census, and it was actually kind of interesting, and we can call up and the lady will come here. But she was basically encouraging everybody to be sure to fill out the census form, because there is a lot that the city has at stake, and you have at stake with it. It determines a lot of funding for federal programs, federal monies, street repair, daycare, et cetera. But she said that the biggest undercount is kids under 5. That on the coast, last census, it was 1,800 kids when there's actually 5,000. Apparently the way it's going to work is we're all going to get a letter around March 12th, and they're going to send you 4 letters to take and do the census. If at that point you don't do it, they're going to come knocking at your door to get it. The letter will actually have 12 language, some sort of website that will take you into 12 languages for you to fill out the census. And if you are not one of those 12, you can go to the library and there'll be a kiosk there with 59 different languages to fill out the census. So basically, they also are looking for the city to partner with the census to get the word out. I'll give that on to Kevin. Next is I attended the Pacifica Democrats candidate forum, and I saw 6 people running for the state senate to replace termed out Jerry Hill. Also had the pleasure of master of ceremonies for a Cub Scout becoming an Eagle, and also got to talk to a bunch of 5th grade boys that are Cub Scouts when they have to talk to an elected official for a badge to move up the ranks. So I was the elected official, which always gives you some real interesting questions, such as, do you pick the food out at the school cafeteria? And it's really that's always fun. I look forward to that. I also was at the ribbon cutting for the Anchor Inn last week. So that's me.
Great. Sue Varlas?
I attended, Hart had a presentation on accessory dwelling units. They are now going to they have several designs, about 5 designs for accessory dwelling units that you will soon be able to get online. And then you can take those already designed dwelling units and take them to your architect to fit on your parcel. We also have the one-stop shop program here, which to help people go through the process of building accessory dwelling units. I went to the Democrats also to listen to the candidates. They're widely varied, and there are 5 of them, and they have a wide variety of ideas, so make sure you read about all of the candidates before you vote, and that is coming soon in March. The Pacifica Realtors and Mike Irvin from Supreme Lending put on another accessory dwelling unit meeting at Sharp Park on Saturday. They only have 60 seats. We had about 75 people there. So it's really helpful, and Christian came to speak, and Caleb from the county, and I'm sorry, I don't know the woman's name, regarding the new Section 8. So it was a lot of good information, and we're hoping that some accessory dwelling units are built because of these seminars. I also went to a banquet for the Chinese Benevolent Association, which was quite interesting, and the opening of the Anchor Inn, which are some pretty high-end accessory dwelling units that are currently a hotel or an Airbnb, and they were really nice. And an interesting concept there to have 4 hotel units. So it was nice to go out and see them. Thanks. My schedule aligned closely with council members.
O'Neill and Bauderlos in terms of attending the, we attended the Economic Development Committee meeting on the 14th. And one of the projects that the Economic Development Committee is working on right now is a plan for the next phase of work that's going to be done at Palmetto and creating a community-based activity and event around that. So more to come on that. It would be in the late spring. The date hasn't yet been set, but they're working on that. We also had a great presentation by a local graphic artist who talked a lot about business to business and that kind of work. So that was very interesting. The Pacific, I met with the Pacifica Library Foundation just to discuss some ideas about how they can support the library project and ideas they were bringing forward that they wanted to engage with the Library Advisory Committee, which was great. The Democrats meeting, also, yes, definitely look at the candidates. There were 5 Democratic candidates. I don't know how many.
One Republican.
One more, so there'll be 6 altogether that we know of. And the Chinese dinner was, I believe, for the Donghua Benevolent Association, and it was the installation of their officers for this year. It was the first time I'd been to such a large event. It was really very great. Saw some other elected officials from other cities and met a number of individuals. Coming up, there is the Sharp Park Specific Plan meeting. That's another activity that some of the Economic Development Committee folks have been engaging in spreading the word on that. I know we've heard it from us a ton of times and from the city manager. That meeting is happening Wednesday at 6:30 at the Little Brown Church, and there is overflow space in the planning department. And as of earlier this afternoon, there were 8 spaces left on the RSVP. So if you check the city website and look for that, if you're interested in attending. This coming Thursday, there will be a census workshop Supervisor Carol Groom is putting on, again, so I can learn everything that Councilmember O'Neill already knows about the census and how it's going to work, because I really don't. And so I'll be happy to share that out when I learn. I think that's it. Mary.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming out, being civically engaged. It's really important. I want to thank wastewater staff for the quick response to the transformer issue that you guys had. Thank you so much. We appreciate your hard work. You guys rock. I attended the emergency preparedness meeting. There's new commissioners and a new chair, and so we're preparing for some guest speakers to come. The CERT class has begun, so I'm sorry that I can't attend. I really wanted to, but then they looked at me like, you're not going to have enough time to do CERT, really. So maybe at some point I'll be able to do it. I attended the Democratic panel discussion with the 5 Democratic state senator candidates. That was really interesting and informative. Let's see, our joint articulation meeting had to be rescheduled, so I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to going to the surf movie on February 7th, so that's going to be really great. Hope y'all can come out to that. I'm going to be attending the ribbon cutting and groundbreaking ceremony for the Jefferson Union High School District Faculty and Staff Housing Project. They're breaking ground on February 5th. It's so exciting. I'm so proud to be a part of a district that cares so much about its staff and faculty that they're going out and creating 122 units of housing. So that's very exciting. I also spent a lot of time responding to the folks in Lindemar in regards to St. Edmunds. So I just really want to reiterate the fact that this is a one-day feasibility study that's happening at St. Edmunds. It's completely controlled, and there'll be staff there, and it'll be in and out, and so I feel bad that there had been misinformation, and I know everyone hates that word, but that's what it was. So there had been misinformation shared in the community, And so I know Sue Degree was just talking about communication, and I think it's really important that we communicate as much and as often as we possibly can so that we can try to stop those things from happening before they start. Because like it was said earlier, you know, the more information we have, the less fear there is. So that's it.
Thank you. Go ahead.
One more thing. Thank you, Mary, for mentioning staff. I would like to acknowledge Public Works staff for the incredible job they did assisting with the flood that happened at Ocean Shore School last Wednesday. I think it was Wednesday. I ran into the superintendent over the weekend at a fundraiser, and she said it was the longest short week that they'd ever had because there were actually 2 days off at the beginning of that week. And it was an incredible effort. It was really exciting to see when there's literally a disaster. I mean, when the whole school is flooded and their equipment has to be moved out. The library got flooded. Just to have the maintenance, facilities maintenance and operations staff of the school district working so closely with our own public works staff to make that problem get resolved. It was just very inspiring, and I really want to shout out publicly, thank you, Paul Lavarini and all of the staff for the incredible work that was done, and wastewater as well. Thank you.
I second that. Nice work. Thank you. I attended the Open Space Advisory Committee. For the life of me, I can't really remember what we talked about, but I wanted to remind you all to go to these meetings because we have representation there from Golden Gate, National Rec, and people from the community who are talking about their neighborhoods, and it's pretty informational. And you have the opportunity to be really engaged in that, so and be part of it if you want. So that's the second Wednesday of every month at the Emergency Operations Center at the Police Department. I also want to reiterate the Sharp Park specific plan this Wednesday at the Pacifica Coastside Museum. And starts at 6:30. Seats are limited. You have to RSVP, so it's on Connect with Pacifica. You can find it on our website. Should be fun. I also wanted to remind you about the surf movie, the Pacific Beach Coalition Surf Movie Fundraiser for Earth Day. All that money goes right back into the community. There's a 5 p.m. showing and an 8 p.m. showing. These tickets will sell out, and you will be bummed to miss it. It's a really fun event. It's not just a movie, it's an event. Also, I attended the MLK Day of Service, Martin Luther King Day of Service, that we hosted, that the Beach Coalition hosted at Lindemar, with a beach cleanup starting at 9, and then at 10 a.m. we went up a little bit north of Crespi and did some native planting on the beach, and it's just a really special event. I engaged both my children, and they, one wanted to clean the beach, the other one wanted to plant, so we did it all, and it was great. It was a great turnout, and it was a beautiful day, and everything is looking fine these days, so thank you for those who showed up. Also, start signing up for Earth Day. If you have a project you want to do, we'll get people out to help you. You can look on the website. We'll get you some volunteers. So, Peninsula Clean Energy board meeting this past week. It was pretty heated discussion about what types of energy we will and will not support. So, stay tuned. Look on your energy labels. It's eye-opening. I'll let you do that on your own. And then also we talk a lot about PG&E potentially becoming a customer-owned entity, and the governor rejecting their most recent PG&E's most recent plans for how they're going to handle the bankruptcy. So stay tuned for more of that information. And we're only the second meeting in January, and already we've had a lot of wild stuff going on in the world, and I just sort of want to acknowledge that these things are happening. And at the end of the evening, I'd like to adjourn in honor of these things that have been happening. I will not repeat them, but I will say them now. Kobe Bryant and his daughter and those 7 other folks that died in a helicopter crash yesterday. I want to keep everyone in our hearts there. Also, those suffering from the coronavirus and China that is all but stopped working right now. So let's just try to send those folks some positive energies. And all those Ukrainian families that died in the missile strike above Iran earlier this year. We're not even to the end of January, and already we've got some really wild stuff going on. I want to say Happy Chinese New Year to everyone. And I had a great Chinese New Year at the Hot Pot Karaoke place up in Manor. If you have not gone there, get 6 people and get the VIP room. You will not regret it. That's all from me.
Thank you.
So fun. We should go.
We'll notice it. No carry. We'll notice it.
Team building.
Yeah, team building.
Goal
Okay.
setting.
So staff communication.
Good evening, Mayor Martin, members of the City Council. My name is Lorenzo Hines. I'm your Assistant City Manager. City Manager Kevin Woodhouse sends his sincere apologies. He couldn't be here tonight after having surgery on Friday. He's required to keep his leg elevated, so it's kind of hard to do that here at the desk. So he is not here physically, but he is listening and he is in communication with me. I also wanted to sort of third the conversation and the announcement about the Sharp Park specific plan community meeting for this Wednesday. We're really very impressed by the RSVPs that we've received, which are right now over 100, and we'll look forward to a productive engagement with the community. Next up, I wanted to introduce Chief Dan Steidel, who will give us a little background on a wrong-way fatal collision on Highway 1 that occurred earlier this month.
So, good evening again, Honorable Mayor and Council members. I'm Dan Steidler, Chief of Police. And speaking with City Manager Woodhouse last week after the fatal collision on Highway 1 on January 16th, we were noticing a lot of misinformation on social media about what was occurring. It's kind of like the telephone game. One person's version of events or opinion becomes fact, and then we become inundated with emails. And so we put out to Council on Thursday the 23rd a statement regarding what occurred, as well as we put that on social media in hopes that people would understand what happened there. First of all, the information that I've received is from Captain Steve Ramos, who's the commander of CHP Division in San Francisco, who we work closely with in this area. The CHP San Francisco Division is in charge of the city and county of San Francisco, as well as the north third, I believe, of San Mateo County, which includes us. So what occurred on that evening was a little different from the other collisions we've had over the years of wrong-way drivers. It was on January 16th, a little after 3 a.m. It was a fatal collision. It occurred on Highway 1 north of the Manor Drive exit. The driver that was killed in the collision was traveling northbound in the southbound lanes when the collision occurred. As I said, most discussion on social media occurred with community members expressing concern about this, as there's been, as we know, several. What was different about this collision is this incident started from a caller calling into the CHP saying that they were on the freeway and they were observing a vehicle that was driving erratically, weaving in and out of their lane. The CHP officers that were in the vehicle were in the area and found the vehicle driving on, I believe it was 280 at the time, and observed this driving that was reported by the citizen. The vehicle was also driving, according to the captain, in excessive speed. So they conducted a traffic enforcement stop on this vehicle, southbound Highway 1 coming into town. The vehicle took the Manor Drive exit and appeared to be yielding. At some point, just prior to yielding, the offending driver decided that they were going to run from the police, run from the CHP, made a U-turn and intentionally drove on the on-ramp from which he had just exited. At that time, as most policies dictate in law enforcement, we're not going to chase somebody the wrong way on the freeway. That's far too dangerous. CHP officers went around over to Oceana Boulevard, entered the freeway, and then we're going to, with intention on paralleling that driver catching up, unfortunately, bidding it too far, and they realized the driver had hit somebody head on. So there were 2 people that were injured in the vehicle that was traveling in the proper direction. That person was injured, as well as the passenger in the suspect vehicle in this case. And as we know, the suspect that was trying to evade the CHP officers was killed in that collision. So a couple of things I wanted to cover with you regarding this. Since we've experienced these collisions over the last couple of years, one of the things that's been going on with CHP much more recently, within the last year or so, is we've worked directly with the Highway Patrol as well as Daly City Police Department in conducting DUI enforcement in the 280 State Route 1 corridor. We use grant funds. As you may know, we have an Office of Traffic Safety grant that we use for DUI checkpoints, as well as for conducting what we call roving patrols. We put officers out on overtime during the evening hours for the purpose of doing nothing but going out there and looking for DUI drivers. According to Captain Ramos from the CHP, they've repositioned field units to ensure that I-280 and State Route 1 are properly covered. And they have those respective units conduct safety checks in the nighttime hours from the RC limits all the way to the Montero limits. They also take it a little bit farther because we know, and I'll explain shortly, these collisions are usually caused by DUI drivers. They use their felony follow-up team to investigate and determine the driver's point of origin. Where were they drinking? Most of these collisions, as the high majority of them turn out to be fatals, they're treated like homicide investigations. These are criminal events. So they determine where these folks were drinking, and oftentimes we use resources from the Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control to go after these establishments if these persons have been overserved. Once the suspect's route has been determined, the person who entered the freeway the wrong way, what CHP staff does is determine, is there anything that could have been done differently at that point of entry? Is there signage there? Has been signage been, fallen off and taken away? Is everything properly striped? They meet quarterly with Caltrans for the purpose of reviewing these intersections to making sure that they're doing everything they can to prevent these types of collisions. So what we have here, just a quick recap of the collisions. Since January 1st of 2015, there have been 6 collisions within the city of Pacifica that were wrong-way drivers. 5 of those collisions were in CHP jurisdiction. The jurisdictional boundary for CHP and for the Pacifica Police Department is roughly, if you know where Westport Drive is, just before the Moose Lodge, where Westport crosses the highway, and you go, if you follow that back to the Sharp Park on-ramp and off-ramp, roughly halfway between there is the cutoff point. Everything north, the CHP is responsible for reporting, in terms of reporting collisions. We are responsible for everything south. But we both go back and forth and conduct enforcement into each other's territory as it's a single straightaway there. And of course, we know that the one that occurred in Pacifica that was within our jurisdiction was the one in 2015, the Christmas Day collision of the gentleman that died in the Uber that was traveling in the correct direction. One thing in common with verified all of these collisions in Pacifica, we haven't verified the most recent one, but all of the collisions, the drivers were under the influence, the wrong-way drivers were under the influence of alcohol and/or narcotics. Every time. That's our common denominator. That's why we take our DUI enforcement seriously. And in speaking with the captain, I am pleased with the efforts that the CHP has done in working with us and working with Daly City PD to make sure that we're covering these areas. I'll tell you, there's a lot of concern. I think they're doing a good job of keeping up on the signage to make sure that we have things done appropriately. But at the same time, I know they are thinking outside the box, and nothing was shared with me. I think this captain is looking at other ideas to make those areas safer. The one thing that we all struggle with DUI collisions, I'll give you just a short background about myself. 30 years of law enforcement experience, 8 years as a major collision investigator. And as an officer, I either, as we used to say, led the league in the department or came in second and third every year with DUI enforcement and DUI arrests. So it's very easy to say that I'm an expert in the collision field and in the DUI enforcement field. And one thing that resonates with me as we look at ways to do this and why we push DUI enforcement so hard in this community is that think about how intoxicated you have to be to not realize you're going up a freeway on-ramp, to pass the illuminated, the reflective signs that say, do not enter wrong way. If for some reason you blinked and you missed the signage, once you get up onto the freeway, look at this the next time you're at one of our intersections and it's dark. If you're close to the like Reynolds Demar or Lindemar or Fassler, take a look in the opposite direction and watch your headlights as they bounce off of the lane markers, the plastic lane reflectors. If you're going the wrong way, those light up red. So you're going against the red. So we will continue to work with CHP and Caltrans, coming up with ideas we can do to make our intersections and our freeway on-ramps and off-ramps safer. But I can tell you from my professional opinion, they're working really, really hard to make that possible right now.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you so much.
And that concludes staff comments.
Great, thank you. We have no public hearings, and before we go on to consideration items, I'd like to take a 5-minute break, if that's okay? Thank you. 5 minutes is up. Okay, we will move on to Safe and Sane Fireworks Program update. I think there's a staff report from Police Chief Dan Steidel.
Been working tonight. Oh, damn, we're seeing so much of you tonight. I may have this. I may have this. Don't look at him buried. Sorry, honey.
We're all set.
All right. Good evening again, Honorable Mayor and council members. I'm Dan Steidel, your Chief of Police. We wanted to take a few moments this evening and bring back items to you regarding our Safe and Sane Fireworks program. This is an update. If you recall, this City Council adopted a council priority for the 2019-2020 fiscal year to hold a Safe and Sane legal fireworks study session, which we did on September 23rd of 2019. At that time, council directed staff to research convening a task force of non-profit group members that sell the fireworks for the purpose of researching alternative funding sources. After much discussion with staff and coming up with how that would look or the pros and cons of that, staff is reporting back to council that we feel that that would be counterproductive for a couple of reasons. First, if you recall, during the study session, we had numerous members of the nonprofit groups coming up and speaking to the council about how they feel about this funding, how critical it is to their organizations. So we felt that there would be lack of incentive for the nonprofit groups at this point to actively participate in a task force process. We also felt that doing so could be viewed by those groups as assisting in ending a program that they've already proclaimed that they don't want to end. And again, this is nothing, I'm not saying anything negative about any of the groups. This is just human nature here. If the Safe and Sane fireworks are prohibited, nonprofit groups would be competing for the same alternate funding sources, and likely there would be a lack of incentive to share those ideas or those resources with each other. So what staff did is we looked at, we understand that it is, the City Council desires to know the will of our community regarding whether this program, Safe and Sane Fireworks program, should continue or not. There's also been discussion about a potential advisory measure to be put on the ballot in November of this year. Staff is aware of a program called Flash Vote. The Flash Vote could assist the council in understanding the position of the community for the continued sales of Safe and Sane fireworks. So what Flash Vote does is they reach out to community members proactively to try and get a good cross-section of our community to sign up for the program. And in signing up for the program, they would be asked if they could donate a minute of their time now and then to provide the city feedback via a poll on certain issues within the community. They would send out emails, texts, and phone calls. Again, the idea behind this is reaching a broad cross-section of our community rather than just a small group of people that are on either side of the debate. One of the things that Flashbooks talks about, and we all understand, is that bell curve, where you have a few people over on the left, a few people over on the right side of that curve, and then you have that 98% of the community in the middle of the curve. We want to try and get that cross-section to engage the rest of those people that aren't coming to the council meetings and talking about this. So if we went with a program like Flash Vote, or went with a Flash Vote program, we're being told that setting up an initial community database would take approximately 6 weeks, or up to 6 weeks. Flash Vote would assist staff in designing questions to get best results from the community members, making sure that we're asking questions the right way to gauge the pulse of the community. Once a poll would be sent out to the community, Flash Vote says that they would be able to generate results for us within 48 hours. Now, the costs are pretty minimal for this type of program, $1,000 for startup costs, and the subscription is $5,000 per year for up to 5 polls per year. So we could use it for this type of topic as well as anything else that came up within the city. The second thing we wanted to do is we understand as this process moves forward, wherever council's direction may take us, we're going to need to learn a little bit more about these nonprofit groups to better understand their governing structure as well as their revenues related to fireworks. What we're going to be recommending tonight is, in addition to the flash vote, is that staff reach out to contact these nonprofit groups to determine who's making the decision in their groups, who leads the organization. We do hear from a few people that come to the podium, but we want to know, are we really gathering the information regarding what the group or what the governing body of that group thinks or feels? We want to talk about whether they've been able to identify any alternative funding sources, or if that's even been discussed, what the organization would do if the Safe and Sane fireworks revenue were lost, and if the sales of Safe and Sane fireworks ended, would the organization prefer a plan, if they had to go, to phase out over the program over a period of time? And finally, how much would participation fees in their programs for their members increase to match the level of funding the Safe and Sane fireworks program provides? And again, this would be a staff-initiated questionnaire that we would send, likely myself, directly out, and this would not be part of the flash vote program. So this evening, the city manager is recommending that we utilize the flash vote tool to engage the opinion of the community regarding the continuation of the Safe and Safe fireworks program, that staff communicate to the nonprofit groups in the form of a questionnaire to understand the governing structure and the revenue situation related to fireworks sales for these nonprofit groups, and that staff report back to council the results of the flash vote survey and the nonprofit questionnaires. And with that, I'd be happy to entertain questions from council.
Mike?
Okay. Now, from what you said and what I read was, it looks like this is more proactive. They are calling the people, the pollsters, correct? They are calling the police. I guess that's the right word for them.
They're reaching
people whose opinion we want.
Yes, they're reaching out to build the database of community members, rather than, for example, us putting something on a website and saying, if you're interested, come to our website and speak your piece.
Now, what lists are they using to get voter registration, DMV?
Yeah, I'm not certain as to where they're getting their lists.
Okay, because DMV I don't think has email addresses. I don't think they, of course, I've had my license so long.
They didn't have email when you...
Yeah, they didn't have email. They didn't even have computers or Windows, you know, but anyhow. And then once, Abacus, it's not that bad, okay? Okay, but if you, stone and chisel when you did it, will these people that are on there then be permanent, so that if, let's say, we decide to do a poll, you know, 3 months down the road on something, will they still be on that list, or they build a new database every time?
No, they would still be on that list. The idea behind this type of tool is it's used as a civic engagement, building that list, and the folks are people that are being signed up or being asked up front. You know, how much of your time would you be willing to donate? Can you donate a minute of your time when city issues come up? So, yes.
Right. Will it give the citizens an opportunity to put remarks in there saying, you know, I want this, but I don't like this, or whatever?
I believe that depends on how the questions are set up. I'm not sure to what level that will actually occur.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Anyone have anything else? Anyone have any other questions? This is...
I do, sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Comment, I guess.
Great.
I know. Is there a question about how the police department and the fire department are going to gain their about approximately $32,000 that we need for them to do the overtime that night and the other days surrounding July 4th?
The question is, how are we going to pay for that?
That's the question.
Well, that is a good question. I guess the only response I would have to that is that prior to 2014, when we instituted the 8% tax, 8% safety fee for these, we paid for it out of the general fund.
What was it, 32?
32. Okay, thank you.
As a follow-up to that, if there were no more Safe and Sane fireworks allowed in Pacifica, would you still have to have every member of the PPD on staff that night?
Yes. Just because of the problem, I mean, I've been here since 1993, and that was instituted well before 1993. Just because of the level, the crowds that come out, the parties in the street, the illegal fireworks, which we know are still going to be there.
And Bruno?
Okay, I just was curious.
Yes.
Does anybody else have any comments?
Any questions?
What? No, it's not a public hearing, is it? No, it's just a discussion. I did a little research into this flash vote too. I think we all actually received emails about it or some variation of this civic engagement tool. I've been getting hit up a lot, and I love the idea of this flash vote. It's sort of like an opt-in, and you're like one of the people in the community that votes on things that we would like voted on. And so if we buy this for $5,000, we get how many, 5 or 10 votes a year?
Up to 5.
Up to 5. So I don't know, I think that's pretty cool. And I like the idea that we had already discussed as a council, needing to make sure that we prioritize the discussion and questions around and to and around the nonprofit groups that benefit from the Safe and Sane fireworks sales. The discussion about alternate sources of funding, things like that. So, and also to the first bullet point, going out to the public, aside from those that benefit directly, just the public's general idea about Safe and Sane fireworks. And then I'm so curious about what those results would look like, obviously. So I know there's, yeah, I'm just kind of sort of, if any of this is sparking any of your, anything about the flash vote that you liked it, you were.
Personally, I like that. I like the idea of any tool that's going to engage the other 98% of the community. As we know, we have some good folks in our community that come to our meetings, that come to a lot of our meetings and speak on every topic, but that's just such a small majority of our folks. And while those folks do need to be heard, and we're glad they're here, any type of engagement tool that can get us that rest of the population, the people that don't normally come to meetings and get involved, I think is a good idea.
Yeah. Great. Okay, so we have 2 cards on this item. You okay with me opening it up to public? Okay, so Dennis Ravel and Dan Sedgink.
Good evening, Mayor Martin, members of the council. Dennis Ravel of Ravel Communications, appearing on behalf of our client T&T Fireworks. It is kind of unusual. While I applaud you for your service to this community, to appear here before you this evening and have Sue sitting behind me rather than in front of me. But I would like to just share with you some considerations and points as it relates to flash vote and my limited exposure to it in other communities. It does not use voter databases. So the community that you're dealing with is a commercial database. They have a 230 million person database nationally, which they use. And it depends on from community to community how large that database will be for Pacifica. But it will be a commercial base, and you don't know whether or not those people they were contacting are temporary residents or indeed residents of any long-standing here in Pacifica, or whether they're voters. To give you an example, it is a very unique tool, and I think it has a purpose and a future as it relates to governments for the very reasons that Chief Steidel has mentioned. But the city that or the example that they use for most communities is Water District in Rancho Cucamonga, I think, as I recall, they had 669 respondents after many multiple tries. Out of that, there's 177,000 plus registered voters in that city, and, 95 registered voters, and their resident population was 177,000. But it took some time to get them to that number. So I don't want you to have false expectations as to the level of response, because it's basically a building mechanism in terms of the number of times that they go out on various issues. The population and the respondent population will build with each one. So if fireworks is the first one, I don't think that you can necessarily have the same degree of confidence that you might have from a survey that is the fifth one. With that, I would just ask that it's also my understanding that Flash Vote develops the questions, then has you approve them, you or staff approve them before it goes out. Obviously, with issues that deal with services that a resident is familiar with, it's easy to ask questions about your water service, your utilities, or something like that, and get an accurate response. With an emotional issue like fireworks, depending on how the question is phrased in any survey, you could dictate the response that you will get. And so I would just ask that you consider that as you move forward.
Thank you. Dan Stejink, that's the last card I have for this item.
Good evening, council members. Thanks for hearing me. I'm Dan Stejink. It strikes me this would be an excellent thing to go on a ballot measure. Either people want fireworks or they don't. I kind of agree that survey is a self-selected sample that isn't going to bring a lot of valuable information. We know a couple things. We know fireworks and kids don't mix. 1974, Terra Nova, a kid was blinded and lost his hearing from a fireworks accident there. We know that fireworks and alcohol sales don't mix. The Alcoholic Beverage Control License Bureau has said that holding a beverage control license is never compatible with fireworks sales. We know 7-Elevens used to sell fireworks here, and there's a reason they don't anymore. We know that fireworks and beaches don't mix. When I called the California State Parks and I checked on the partnership agreement with the city's management agreement, they were very surprised that we had a fireworks section on there every July 4th. Paige Rakowski from California State Parks, if anybody's interested in contacting them. And finally, maybe we should think about moving some of these fireworks sales locations farther away from Pacifica State Beach. We've got one in Pedro Point Shopping Center. We've got one at Safeway. We've got one right in that parking lot at Kenny's on Crespi. We've got three that are kind of sandwiching the beach, and it's just not a beneficial activity for us, and it wastes fire and police department resources all year long. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. Anyone have anything? Okay, back to council. I don't have any red lights here. Do we have some recommendations? The recommended action is to direct the city manager to gather further information from the community through the flash vote polling tool and questionnaires to nonprofit groups who receive funding through the Safe and Sane Fireworks Program, and return to city council with additional information.
I guess I'm the guy? Okay.
Yeah.
So, I understand they're going to they would do a survey of the nonprofit groups that have all gotten licenses within the last 3 years. And then in addition to that, we would do the flash vote, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Staff would be in contact with the nonprofit groups for that information.
Okay. I have no problem doing either, although I will be upfront and I would be very reluctant to ban fireworks in the city without a public vote, because the public have voted twice they want fireworks. And I think it's not our purview to overturn public votes, especially when it's happened twice. But I'm perfectly willing to put it on the ballot, because the world has changed since the last election, which, to be honest with you, I don't recall what it was. But I was on the fireworks task force, and a lot of the nonprofits would be very hard-pressed to replace that revenue, as would the city for the overtime we would still need to have for police and fire, et cetera.
Well, I have to agree with Councilmember O'Neill. I think it should go to a vote, I really do. And so, you know, polling is a great idea. Yeah, I don't have a problem with the polling. I am wondering about the questions for the nonprofits. Is there a chance to like add some questions or maybe some follow-up, or like, I'm very concerned about them, and if there's any way that we can help them in fundraising, planning, or anything like that. So maybe, would we have an opportunity to add some questions?
Certainly.
Okay, cool. I'm not sure what question right now. I would have to think about that, but okay, I'm okay with it.
I was all in favor of the flash poll, but I can understand that you're saying that the very first one that you do is probably your least accurate flash poll that you do, because there's not very many people who know about it, and I definitely don't think we should use that to determine what happens with the Safe and Sane fireworks. I do think it's a good tool for the city and that we can use it for other items, but as time passes, I think it'll be more effective than the initial. So I'm in favor, but I just don't think we should hang our hats on it.
I would like us to investigate utilizing flash vote. I think that it provides us the opportunity with 5 surveys that we can do in a year, I think it was, to build on that, to come back to people at a future point with more in-depth questions, et cetera. And yeah, it would be a building process. I also agree with Mike and Mary that it would not be sufficient to supplant a vote in terms of a decision about fireworks, yes or no, in this community. That should be in the hands of the voters, in my view. Even though, that said, it would cost, I forgot how much, to conduct such a vote. Do you remember?
I believe it was upwards of, I think it was $60,000 for November 2020.
Unless there's if there's 2 measures, then it's less.
Right, but he said November would be a council election, so it would be cheaper
Oh, yeah.
in any council election year, so.
That's all I have.
Yeah, I agree with everything everyone said this evening. I hope that, you know, if we do implement that flash vote, that it sort of gives us a good idea, a good sampling of how people feel in general. And maybe one of those questions is, does it go to a vote of the people? And I'm in favor of that also. So I think you pretty much have a consensus up here. Yep.
Just throw out something for discussion is, this is roughly $5,000, right? If it's $60,000 for an election, do we want to consider putting it on the ballot, yes or no to fireworks? And this $5,000 goes towards it. Although I do agree, I think this would be a good tool, second or third poll in, to get a temperature on the city. I don't disagree with what anybody has said. I'm just throwing that out for discussion.
So the question was, do we want to make that one of the questions as part of the poll? Do you want to vote on this? Is that what you said?
He said not spend the money on it
Yeah.
and
Not
use
spend the
it
money and put
towards
that
the
towards an
election.
election.
But there are other items that we can use this for.
Yeah, but I do agree that I think this would be a useful tool for the city to have arrow in its quiver, you know.
Right.
So,
Even aside from fireworks.
so, yeah, yeah, I do. I guess just consensus, I'm hearing the consensus is still move forward, so.
Right, so let's just be clear, though. So the consensus is to move forward with the recommendation that staff made. Would you like us to bring back something related to placing something on the ballot for November, which we would, you know, want to do in the near future?
The deadline's probably what, August?
So I believe it was August, I believe they said.
Well, it would be earlier than that in order to get it on the ballot. I think the council would have to make a decision at least by spring.
I
June.
would appreciate that.
Can we look at costs, though, before we do that?
Yes, well, we would bring another agenda item to the council to discuss whether or not you want to place it on the ballot. That would be the agenda item. I'm just trying to figure out if that's what you would like us to do, or...
I'd be in favor of that.
I think so, because this has been brewing and, going for so many years. It's just like, put a fork in it one way or the other.
Okay.
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 Thank you.
We'll study it.
Yes. That's what she's, yeah.
that's what she said.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to our last item on the agenda, which is our comprehensive annual financial report for 2018-2019. And Acting City Manager Lorenzo Hines will be presenting.
Ooh, electronic ad paper. Multimodal,
Multimodal?
paper and electronic.
Thank you, Mayor Martin and members of the Pacifica City Council. Again, my name is Lorenzo Hines, your Assistant City Manager. I am here to present to you the 2018-2019 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. We're going to have a slide presentation in a few minutes where I'll take you through a few features of the CAFR, as we call it. But I just wanted to let you know that the independent accounting firm of Mays and Associates has completed the city's fiscal year 2018-19 audit. Mays follows specific guidelines in performing their audits, including guidelines that are in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards practiced in the United States. Their report, which appears on page 1 of the city's comprehensive annual financial report, it's attachment 1, is unmodified, and so, which means that the city's financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects, and it's the highest level of auditor assurance that the city can achieve. And so we have had an unmodified opinion at least for the last 5 years on our financial statements. This report contains the CAFR, which we'll discuss here in a little bit. It also contains an audit report for our Measure A funds. And so the auditors have indicated that the city has complied in all material respects with the aforementioned requirements through year-end June 30, 2019, as it pertains to our Measure A funds. They've also audited our Transportation Development Act, or TDA funds, and they've also found that the city's information is fairly stated in this report as well. They've also audited our agreed-upon procedures for compliance with Prop 111, which is the GAN limit, and have indicated that no exceptions were noted in this particular audit. In addition, we have a memorandum of internal control and required communications letter, and basically this is a check on the city's internal controls. This year, there were no significant deficiencies. Last year, we did have a couple of significant deficiencies. We're able to clean those up, and so there are no real big issues. However, there are some other matters that merit attention for improving internal controls. So there's sort of like a hierarchy of findings that the auditor has. What we try to stay away from is these significant deficiencies. In addition, we'll be presenting to you at a later time the single audit for federal awards, and that's for all federal awards that exceed $750,000. We did meet that threshold for this fiscal year, and we'll present the single audit report at a later date. So I want to talk with you. Does everyone have a copy of the presentation? Great. So I wanted to chat with you about the comprehensive annual financial report through June 30, 2019. And so the report itself is made up of the letter of transmittal, which is at the beginning of the report. There's an org chart, and there's a list of the principal officers. Next to that is the management discussion and analysis. And so the MD&A, as we call it, is like an executive summary. And so for me, if you don't want to go through the detail of getting the 100 some odd pages of the CAFR, that MD&A sums it up for you pretty nicely. Next to the after the MD&A, we have the government-wide statements, and these statements just provide information about the city as a whole and our overall financial condition. We have the statement of net position, which is our balance sheet, and the statement of activities and changes in net position, which is our income statement. After the government-wide income statements, we have fund financial statements, and what this does is it provides information about the city's major funds, and non-major funds are shown in total, but we break out the major funds. We also break them out by governmental funds, proprietary funds, and fiduciary funds. After the fund statements, we have the notes, and the notes provide additional information about the financial statements, and they provide just some really in-depth information regarding our accounting policies and a lot of the things that make up these statements. There is other information that we're required to present, including budgetary comparison schedules for the city's general fund, which is intended to furnish additional detail to support the basic financial statements. And then there's the statistical section, which is at the back of the report, which provides information regarding the city's financial trends, debt, revenues, demographics, and operations. And so the stats section is a very good tool for getting to know Pacifica. So the CAFR that you see before you is the city's total assets right now exceeds its liabilities by $71.8 million. This is an increase of $10.8 million or 18% over the prior year. The city's revenues were $62.2 million, and this is an increase of $6.1 million or 11% from the prior year. This increase is mainly due to an increase in property taxes and capital grants. There were a number of other revenues that increased, but those are the big ones. The city's, yes, sir.
Just a process question. Can we ask questions as you go through?
Sure.
Okay.
Like I always say, this is a conversation.
Okay. So on your thing there, on your second bullet point, you said the increase is mainly due to an increase in property taxes, which we would look at as ongoing revenue, but the capital grants is one-time revenue, not to be gotten again.
Right.
So do you have roughly how much of the increase of 6.1 was ongoing revenue, such as property taxes, and how much was capital grants?
I would surmise that at least 4 of that 6.1 is ongoing.
Ongoing, okay. Thank you.
Okay. The total city expenses were $51.3 million, which is a decrease of $3.1 million or 6% over the prior year. So the revenues are going up, the expenditures are tickling down, at least for this particular fiscal year. So that was a snapshot of the city sort of overall. The general fund itself, however, that's our chief operating fund. And for the year ended June 30, that should be 2019, total fund balance this year is $15 million. Half of that is non-spendable or has been committed or assigned to cover contingencies, claims, and various other things. So the general fund unassigned balance, I'll jump down to the bottom bullet, currently sits at $7.5 million. And this is after we've moved $3.5 million in funds into formal reserves, which council adopted over the last couple of years. I'll jump back to the third bullet. Our general fund revenues are $33.7 million, $1 million or 3% over the final amended budget. So forgive me, I missed the budgeted revenues by $1 million. So yeah, what can I say? Sorry about that.
In that direction, it's all good.
Yeah, this is a good problem to have. The expenditures were also favorable in that 1.2 million, they were 1.2 million or 3.6% under budget.
On that, is that due to projects we didn't get to? Or can you comment on that?
I think it's a number of things. It may have been projects we didn't get to. It may have been savings in various other areas. I'd have to really look into that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know you did make a note about the Public Works area, but that wouldn't have been reflected in this number, right? That's in a different fund?
No, it would be reflected in the general, it would be
okay.
reflected in the general fund.
Okay.
There is a decrease in Public Works expenditures, and I think it went from 7 down to 2. And that's because last year we had a lot of process works in progress. And so whenever there's capital projects in progress, we have to capitalize it at that point. And so those capital projects are done.
Yeah.
And now they move out of the general fund's sort of current reporting period, and they sit in the capital assets, which we don't really report for the general fund. We report it for the city overall, but for the general fund, we just worry about the sort of the current state of things.
Okay, thank you.
Actually,
And I'm trying not to get too accountant-y here.
if you look at Table 2, it's the long-term, interest on long-term debt was 1.9 last year, and this year 0.7, so that's exactly 1.2 million under budget. So it was the refinancing, partially, part of the savings was the refinancing of the pension obligation bonds per the recommendation of our assistant manager. If I'm looking at Table 2.
Table 2 on packet page 444, page 11 of the CAFR.
Yeah.
And where are you, which line item?
If you look at expenses, it says interest on long-term debt.
Yes.
In 2018, it was 1.9. On 2019, it was my computer just messed up.
Right. 0.7.
0.7,
Yeah.
that's $1.2 million difference.
Right.
So that's the expenditures were 1.2 million under budget.
So as you all know, and I'm sure the public knows, we've been on a crusade to make sure that we've refunded all of our debt to take advantage of the lower interest rates that are available to us. So yes, that is, you're definitely seeing the effect of that. You'll see the effect of it when you see the CAFR for 2020 as well, because we just refunded bonds back in September. So that'll be nice. But we're doing what we can to preserve what we have.
Well, and I appreciate you like explaining things, like, you know, like the public does need to be explained things.
Yes.
Because there's people like me out there in the public who look at this CAFR and it's this giant document, right?
Yes.
So I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So what is an unassigned fund balance, and why is it so much more now than it was in like 2014?
Well, it's because it's a combination of a number of things. Let me see if I can find. I'm going to take you to.
I was looking at packet page 570.
Okay, I'm gonna. So can you go to packet page 458?
I can.
And so if you look at packet page 458, there's a column here to the left. It's called General Fund, and that's the General Fund column.
Yeah.
And it's a balance sheet, so this is the state of the General Fund as of this date. And so you will look at the bottom where it says fund balances, and you will go down at the bottom and you'll see the unassigned says 7.548 million. And so the rest of that fund balance is non-spendable. And so that may be receivables or things that we can't spend because we just don't have it yet.
Okay.
The other amount is the unassigned, and that'll be like your child care reserve. That'll be your other reserves as well. Okay. And so that's the beauty of the notes, because note 11 will break that down for us.
Great.
And so even though we show $15 million in fund balance, those dollars are stratified in accordance with where they are in the accounting cycle, in accordance with council policy, in accordance with restrictions such as the child care reserve, where if we have excess dollars, we have to put it in that reserve. So that all gets reflected there. And so the unsigned balance is basically balance. And that's available for us to do whatever we need to do.
Okay.
And that balance is mostly cash. And so it's good to have that kind of a, how should I say, cushion, given that we're dealing with a budget of $70 million every year, and it's good to have that kind of a cushion. So that's what the undesignated reserve is, or designated unassigned balance
fund
is.
balance.
Yes.
Thanks.
Sure. And so the other thing to note that about our CAFR is that our debt has been reduced, as Councilman O'Neill mentioned, has been reduced by $1.2 million. The business type activities debt has been reduced by $2.7 million. And of course, the banner day for me this year was seeing our bond rating upgraded to AA+. We are one step below AAA, one step below AAA minus. So that concludes my presentation for the CAFR, and so I humbly ask for the council to accept these reports, and I am open to questions if you have them.
I have a couple questions regarding, I'm looking at packet page 453 in the revenue projections paragraph. And it states property tax was projected to only increase by 2.8%, while transit occupancy was projected to increase by 21% due to short-term rental tax revenue projections. And then it also references cannabis business program excise tax revenue. And I recall at the time that the budget was passed last time that you had a strong reluctance and didn't in fact put a lot of cannabis revenues into the budget because of the uncertainty.
Right.
Can you talk about how that truth from back then relates to this paragraph here and where we are right now with that?
So council policy dictated that there would be 6 retail operations within the city. We've got one operation that's open right now that's going full bore right now. And we have another operation that is, I believe, medical only. And we're still waiting for the other 4 to start business. And so I put $130,000 in revenue in the 1920 budget to reflect one business doing medical only and to reflect one business actually opening up and going sort of full bore. And we'll take a look at that when we start the 2021 budget and see if that number needs to go up. But right now, based on the tax receipts that I'm seeing, I think the 130 is pretty good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And are you seeing the increases in the Airbnb TOT taxes?
I believe we put in 350, and I think we'll top 400 this year.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, in regards to the Airbnb, has it cannibalized the hotel TOT?
We have seen the hotel TOT go down, but I'm not sure if it's the short-term rentals driving it down. I'm sure it's impacting it, but there's been a number of hotels that are under construction. And so that may be impacting their revenues, the number of folks staying in those hotels. Now, the good news is some of those hotels have added significant rooms, amount of rooms. And so we hope to rebound, at least on the hotel side, next year. I'll keep an eye on it, though.
Are you aware of other cities that have done what we've done, transit occupancy tax on the Airbnb? Has there been any sort of relation or experience in regards to the cannibalization from hotels to Airbnb?
I have not looked at other cities, but it is something I'll keep in mind. We have had conversations with the hoteliers at Chamber of Commerce meetings. We have, or at least I have made it clear that whenever concern is brought up about the short-term rentals eating into their market, the one thing that I make it clear to the hoteliers is that you're operating in a different space than those short-term rentals. There are those who are not interested in cooking their own breakfast, making their own beds, and doing the things that they would normally do at home. And that's what a short-term rental typically gets you. Then you have those folks who are like me, who don't want to make my own bed, who want to get a hamburger at 2:30 in the morning, and I don't want to cook it. So I'd rather stay at a hotel. But so we try to make sure that they understood that they're operating in a different space and they have to compete in that space and not worry about these short-term rentals.
Well, and they're definitely taking away from our housing market. I'm just throwing that out there.
Understood.
Well, another byproduct too is if hotels aren't there, there's many jobs that won't be there either.
We've also,
housekeeping, et cetera.
just to let you know, we've also brought on a contractor to help us track the short-term rentals here in Pacifica and to help us with the process of getting them regulated, signed up for their operators licenses, business licenses, and and the contractor's done really well for us.
Okay, we have one comment on this item. Tiger?
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Council, and staff. I'm Tiger Jazz Twirls, Big Stick of Pacifica. First of all, this all looks like magic to me when you do it, Lorenzo. I am in awe of your skill and perpetually impressed, so thank you for what you do. I have a very, comparatively, I imagine, simple question. I didn't look much at this. I did not study it in depth whatsoever. Just as I was flipping through and I was looking at the bookmarks in the appendix, honestly, and came across the Measure A on page 592. And again, just a simple question as something of this nature could be, I would imagine. As somebody interested in Measure A and how those dollars ultimately might wind up being used, I just wanted to understand better the process. It looks like essentially every year we're allotted the amount based on property tax, I think, and we accumulate over time. So my question, if it's able to be answered, and I appreciate we can't have it back and forth while I'm up here, but maybe if somebody wants to ask it on my behalf so that I and whoever in the public is like-minded might have an idea. Do we have some idea what a big project might be at some point, or is this money that might go toward potholes? I was driving down Carmel last night, and you go down Alicante, you feel those bumps every time, and I regularly watch the assessments of our asphalt, so I'm just, but also I understand there's overcrossing projects that could happen as a safety thing, so I appreciate there's all sorts of ways these dollars could be spent. And I'm just wondering if there's any kind of plan in place at this time. Is there a big project in the works, or at some point might this be how potholes get filled, or is it a little of everything? Thank you.
Go ahead.
So the Measure A dollars are being used, and we collect those every year, but those are primarily used for street repair, and that's one of the allowed uses. I think this year we've scheduled roughly $1.3 million for ongoing street maintenance, and Measure A is part of that. And it's just one of those things that we use. And there's only so many things you can use it for.
If I remember correctly, Measure A, there's actually stipulations in the tax measure that until your streets hit a certain pavement index, you're required to use it for street repairs. So a lot of the stuff we might want to use it for, we can't, we're not allowed.
Well, you could use it for my street.
Hey,
Man.
I had a guy call,
Nona.
I had a guy
Really bad.
complain about his street, and I looked it up, and mine was worse than his, so, you know. But I just wanted to say is I was especially happy to see that the borrowing of the funds that was used for some of the winter storms and disasters, we've now gotten the disaster fund up to a positive number instead of the red number that it has been for years. And I think that has a lot to do, and I really do want to be part of the choir that says, what a good job, and thank you, Lorenzo, because when I was at the League of Cities, they had this line that I thought was really cool for finances. It's like when the CAFR goes out and the tide is like the CAFR. When the tide goes out, you can see who's not wearing a bathing suit, and I'm glad to see we're wearing a bathing suit. Ours is very good. You have really helped the finances compared to what we were when I first got here.
Yeah, and thank you for taking the time to like explain things to me. You take extra time to make sure that I understand everything, and I really appreciate that.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
That it?
Yeah, the only comment I have is that on packet page 430, my name is misspelled. I know this letter's already been transmitted, it's fine, but it's a common mistake.
Really?
Just on the same letterhead where it's actually spelled correctly. It's just the executive staff note, but
430, wait. E-I-R, there needs to be an R added.
yeah.
D-E-I.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're going to fix that.
Yes.
Okay.
That's good.
Oh, we can do that. My apologies.
Deal in letters, not numbers.
By the way, so we'll fix that definitely before we post it. But I wanted to recognize Sheila Choyao, who's shyly sitting in the back and doesn't want any attention.
Oh, then in that case.
Put the camera on her. Put the camera on her.
But Sheila is our financial services manager and pretty much my right hand over the past 3 years. And she is, basically the author, along with Mays, of this document. So I wanted to give a big thank you to Sheila.
Well done. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I think we have agreement that we would
Need a
like to
motion to
accept.
accept.
We need
Yes.
a motion to accept.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Please vote. That passes. And we will adjourn in honor of all of those sad things that have happened here and send some positive energies out to all those folks who need it this January. Thank you. The time is 10:06.
Thank you, dear.